Ladies, how did a guy ruin their chances with you? He heard a pigeon. We were acquainted with each other through work and it was the first date. We were in a park, walking along, talking. Everything's normal up until then. Suddenly, one of the many pigeons walking around the fountain wandered near us. The guy stops what he's saying mid-sentence and takes a run at the pigeon. The pigeon's too fast for him and takes off, landing just a couple of feet away. The guy takes it personally and goes running after the pigeon, again, repeatedly trying to hurt it. Finally, the pigeon ends the standoff by flying up to a tree. The guy takes off a shoe and throws it. The shoe misses, so the guy picks up his shoe, puts it back on, and starts walking back to me, sulking under his breath as he half-heartedly hurts at any pigeon near him. All of this happened in a matter of minutes. When he first ran at the pigeon, I said something like, "Leave him alone. What are you doing?" But after the full-on pigeon brawl, I was just in shock. When he came back to me, he was panting, wiping sweat from his forehead, but acted like nothing had happened. He started talking about where we should have lunch. I finally said, "What was that?" He looked at me like he was really confused. "What?" "The thing with the pigeon." He just shrugged. "I don't like pigeons." By any chance, were you on a date with a dog?" Story 2. I met this guy in community college. I thought he was really cute, but I was an awkward and gangly girl who didn't know how to flirt. Despite that, we became friends and often hung out with the same group of friends. One day, he and I were sent to get fast food for a group during a library study session. In the car, he suddenly interrupted something I was saying to ask, "So why haven't we been on a date yet?" I froze. I was happy he asked, but awkward me had no idea what to say. The words got stuck in my mind. I waited a second too long because he changed his tune. He got irritated and said, not word for word because my memory isn't perfect, "Oh, I see. It's fine. You don't have to let me down easily. I thought you dressed like a flirt all the time because you wanted me. Maybe you're just a doll. It's too bad, really. I would have treated you like a human being." I tried to explain I was just nervous, but he wasn't listening. He called me a bunch of other names and then just shut down. This was an old guy throwing a tantrum like a child. After that day, he stopped hanging out with us as much. He acted like it didn't exist. The guy will never know that I would have said yes to a date if he just waited a few more seconds. It turned out to be a bad relationship dodged for me. Yeah, you definitely dodged a bullet there. Holy hell. Story 3. I was talking to a guy on OkCupid when I used to be active on the app. He was super cute, had an amazing figure, and seemed like a cool guy and a gentleman. We were getting close to setting up a date, and he suggested going for a walk in the park at night. That was a bit odd, so I thought, oh, okay, that's red flag number 1. Maybe he was just trying to be romantic. I suggested, let's meet somewhere in public first so we can get to know each other a little bit. And I proposed a popular bar or restaurant in the area. Instead, he suggested maybe going to a movie and then taking that walk later on. So to sum it up, he not only suggested the sketchiest thing ever for a first date with someone he met online, but he also ignored my attempt to give him an easy way out and kept pushing for his plan. Finally, he said, "Sure, if you're more comfortable, we can meet in public. What's your address so I can pick you up?" I told him I have a car and can just meet him wherever we decided to go. But he got really pushy, saying he's a gentleman and wouldn't let me drive myself when he could pick me up. He kept insisting that I give him my address so he could come and get me. At that point, I was done. If I had to work that hard to convince him not to be a creeper, it probably wasn't going to end well for me. I stopped responding and blocked him after he kept insisting on getting my address. Thank goodness I never agreed to anything or gave him any of my information. Story 4. I'm starting to think of a story that happened with this guy I was chatting with. Extremely handsome, really bubbly and upbeat, seemed really passionate about his career and future and just had one of those warm, charming smiles. I was honestly surprised he matched with me. We started talking and he immediately asked for my number, which I held off giving to him but eventually conceded. Whoops. He begins texting me constantly through my phone and the app. Always variations of, "I miss you," "Are you there?" "Wish we could meet up," etc. When I had a couple overnight shifts and couldn't text him, it was, "I can't believe you're leaving me so soon after we just met." He asked me 3 times where I lived, not just the specific address but the general city, which was displayed on my profile. Then he asked to see photos of me, and when I again directed him to my profile, he said, "What, you don't have any other photos besides those?" I kept following up with, "I still haven't seen those pictures yet." Then he refused to have me drive to him. I offered several times and he insisted, which at the time I took as a green flag that he didn't want to lock me up in his basement or something. He kept forgetting what I'd told him, always pushing to meet up in the morning, even though I repeated several times that I had work in the morning. He'd forget and ask me the same thing the next day, consistently. His whole demeanor was very weird, half unsettling and half bot-ish. The funny thing was, I ultimately didn't even have to block him to get him off my back. He was pushing to come to my place for like the sixth time, and I mentioned my roommate. Not even to test his response, I just had casually thrown in something about her work schedule. He completely switched gears and asked if she'd be there. I answered that she most likely would be, as she worked from home most of the time. Never heard from him again. Story 5. We went to a Denny's, and he walked with me to my car. I was sitting in the driver's seat and had just started the engine when I heard him rev his engine really loudly. He parked his car right behind mine, blocking me so I couldn't drive away. He got out of his car and knocked on my window. I was really scared, so I only opened the window a tiny bit, about an inch. He said he felt like he needed to tell me that he was very interested in me, even though he had been so nervous during our date. I had the feeling that he didn't have much experience with women because he left nervously every time we accidentally touched. I told him okay, and then he left, which allowed me to leave too. The next morning he sent me a text message, and I told him I wasn't interested in him. I also said that what he did was very scary for me, and he shouldn't do things like that. Thankfully, I never heard from him again. Story 6. I was chatting with this guy I had on my Snapchat. I hadn't really given him a chance as I wasn't that attracted to him. Once I started talking to him more and more, I decided that I'd take his offer to go on a date. He was always such a gentleman and so sweet. I figured we'd have a fun night. So later that evening, I went to open my Snapchat and there it is, a suggestive pic. So I texted back, "Hey, I'm going to have to cancel our date." I've told him so many times that it's such a disappointment when you find a great guy and make a date with him and then just send it. Like they ask you on a date and you accept and they automatically think, "Yeah, they want to see mine." I haven't talked to him since. Story 7. When I was dating, I'm married now, I noticed a pattern with many guys. They would completely take over the conversation in the first date, telling stories that were obviously not the whole truth. They were the opposite of down-to-earth or good listeners. I wasn't looking for someone to marry the next week. I was looking for someone who was fun, emotionally healthy, and had similar interests and views in life. It didn't matter to me if a guy was unemployed. I've been between jobs too. What was important was whether he wanted to work again or had some kind of plan for his life. It also didn't matter if he was living with his mom as a roommate or in his parents' attic. We all need a fresh start sometimes. I just wanted to know if they were open to having their own place someday. It was surprising how many guys I met online who used really old pictures in their profiles and then sat across from me, bragging about how much younger they looked than their age. I was right there and it was clear they looked their age, which would have been fine with me. What I didn't like was dating people who were casual liars. From experience, I know that trying to love someone who is very insecure or has a very distorted view of themselves is like trying to catch a moving target. It's just too hard. Story 8. So I had known this guy for a few years, but we were just friends. I guess we were more acquaintances. He asked me on a date a few years ago and I said yes. We went mini-golfing and then to the mall where we visited a candy store. While we were there, he grabs some candy and shows me and then puts it in his pocket. We're both adults at this point, both with jobs and our own money, and I just thought that was the lamest thing ever. Stealing candy? Really? Anyway, on the ride home, he starts talking about the Black Lives Matter movement, and then he says he dislikes black people and makes some inappropriate jokes. I could not wait to get home and never talk to him again. Story 9. Oh my god, this just happened in the first date 2 nights ago. This guy kept asking me if I party, how much I partied in college. I graduated 5 years ago. How I knew my best friend gender, how my best friend came out to me, if we've ever made out and if I ever kissed a girl. Why I joined a sorority and how I managed to be friends with all the girls and commenting on how slowly I was drinking my drink, even after I said I'm a slow drinker and like to enjoy my drinks. He also kept asking me about guys I've been with in college, how guys behave on Tinder, how many guys message me, and he even had the confidence to ask if I would show him messages other guys send me. Also, he kept making all these assumptions about me and wouldn't really let me correct him, and kept asking questions. So yeah, definitely no second date or further contact. Story 10. There was this very handsome and charming guy who started coming into this small town bar where I worked in college. It was a super nice restaurant and a great, classy place to have a drink after dinner. He would come in specifically to see me and keep me company in the nights when it was slow. He seemed really sweet, though a bit sad because he was going through a divorce. But then I found out he was also visiting lots of other attractive women at their workplaces around town. It was fine. Whatever. He was still fun to flirt with when my shifts were boring. However, things changed when he started getting super hammered and loud. He would ask what time I got off work, which was usually around 3 or 4 a.m. in an empty, quiet town, so he could wait for me outside after my shift. Thankfully, the guy I worked with lived across the street and offered to walk me to my car whenever I closed the bar by myself. He was an actual angel. I want to give a PSA to men. Women almost never want you to wait for them outside their late-night workplace unless they trust you and have asked you to do so. Story 11. I met a guy at a restaurant on the other side of town. We talked, had some coffee, and everything was okay. but there were no sparks or anything special. When I was ready to leave, I thanked him for meeting with me and told him I was tired and wanted to go home. He got in his car and decided to follow me all the way across the city. Then he knocked on my door, begging me to let him in. When I opened the door, he said he wanted to try again with some of the things he had said and that I should give him another chance to explain himself. I didn't think anything he said was strange, but I told him that following me for 25 minutes and showing up at my house was really creepy. I said if he didn't leave, I would call the police. Another guy started crying when I didn't want to kiss him. He said he thought he was in love with me and asked why I didn't feel the same way. I explained that we had just met, that he hadn't said much all night, so I didn't feel the same. And then there was a third guy who admitted on our second date that he was married and had 2 kids. He said he would be willing to pay part of my rent if I moved closer to his office so we could have an affair. Story 12. I went to a bar to hang out after my coworker invited me. One of his friends was there. We shook hands, introduced ourselves, and I mentioned that he looked familiar, like I had seen him before, but I couldn't remember where. He said the same about me. At the end of the night, he offered to drive me home since I'd taken a Lyft to get there. When we got to my house, he told me that he was feeling the effects of the drinks. We'd all taken some drinks about an hour and a half earlier, but I felt fine. I ran back into my house, grabbed a bottle of water, and gave it to him in the car. Then he asked if I could stay with him while he sobered up. I said sure. We started talking about normal things. But then he asked, "Have we ever been together? Is that why you look familiar?" I told him no. Then he asked if I could massage his back because the car seat was giving him pain. After that, he wanted to lay down and rest his head on my lap outside the car. Finally, it was 3 a.m. and I told him I was getting sleepy. I left him and went inside to sleep. Story 13. I'm in college and Facebook had just recently come out. A handsome guy sitting next to me at the computers in the campus library introduces himself. Around 10 minutes later, I got a friend request from the handsome guy. My name is unusual, so I was fairly easy to find. He starts flirt chatting with me on Facebook until it's time for me to leave the library. This flirt chatting continues for another couple of days before he asks if I want to have dinner with him. I say yes, and then tell him to meet me at my dorm or apartment on campus. I want my roommates to meet him first and then run interference if they have a bad feeling about him. He gets to the apartment where he begins to brag about all the money he just inherited and how he's so frugal. He doesn't even go to college here. He just uses the library because it's free. I'm looking at my friend and she's giving me the signal that she's not into this guy. Me either. He continues bragging about himself before he asks me if I have a car. I said yes, and he said, "Me too. I have a blah 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 blah, some car that's supposed to impress me." He then follows it up with, "Want a race?" I look at my friend and she laughs and says, "Yes," before I could even get a word out. We went out to the parking lot where he goes under his car and does something with a pipe or muffler area. He either added or removed something. He told me he shares his car with his mom and she doesn't like whatever he was doing to it. My friend is giggling the entire time. We get in our cars and drive over to a vacant parking lot and line up, side by side. My friend in my passenger seat is at this point laughing uncontrollably. We both step on the gas, head straight for the end of the lot. I turn left at the exit and drive away. Me and my friend sat in the McDonald's parking lot laughing at my situation for a couple of hours until we were certain he was gone. He was so full of himself and very obviously a liar. I was not born wealthy, and money was not important to me, but he talked about it nonstop, attempting to impress me. You could tell none of what he was saying was true. To this day, almost 15 years later, my friend will randomly text me, "Want a race?" Well, at least they got an inside joke out of it. Story 14. I once met a guy on a dating site. I stupidly gave him my home number. Still don't know how I fell for that. Nevertheless, before we have even met in person, he suddenly starts telling me how much he likes to be intimate, all his favorite positions, and that he needs to know if I like it as much. As if that was not enough, I start to notice that his Facebook profile doesn't match up to the description he gave of himself, i.e. job, etc. He was very insistent, calling me every 1 hour on the hour. I didn't know how to extricate myself since I'd given him my home number and I was worried he would backtrack it to my home address. So I came up with a plan. I told him, I'm so glad he likes it because so do I, that I am at an age that I want children and will do anything to have them, that maybe after a few weeks of dating we'll be ready to try and that I'm against rubbers. I never heard from him again. I'm sure he refers to me as someone he dodged. Story 15. He told me he loved me after only a month of dating, which was around our 8th date. He was always giving me gifts, so many that I started to feel uncomfortable. I told him it was too soon for me to say I love you back because I needed to see how he acted when he was angry. I've been mistreated before by men who claimed to love me. Then, a couple of weeks later, I made a small mistake. It was more like a miscommunication. He completely lost it with me, yelling for an hour and a half, not letting me sleep, and calling my phone for over 14 hours. At one point, he sent 11 texts within 11 seconds. He said things like, I could just go off and you wouldn't care, would you? Would you? Huh? Answer me! And, you've just shown me that I'm done with love. I'm done. I'm going to pass away alone. His emotions were all over the place. Rage, despair, calmness, and then back to rage. He was unstable. He never stopped to think, wow, I'm really angry. I should take a step back and calm down. He just kept going at me with his words until I left town for a few days to get away from it all. Before all this happened, I wasn't sure about him, but his behavior sealed the deal for me. Oh, and he was a trained martial artist who always carried weapons with him. The lesson I learned is that if someone puts you on a high pedestal so early in the relationship, you should run. Eventually, you'll make a mistake or show that you're human. Story 16. I met him sophomore college, a couple months before I went home for the summer. He told me he didn't want me hanging out with my friends from home because they're mostly males and he didn't trust them. I'm not about that giving up my childhood friends to please some guy life, so I dumped him. You bet I saw those friends every day that summer. There were some other things, like subtle discrimination. He couldn't understand that girls can know how cars work too. I'm no expert, but I have a basic understanding, and he told me I couldn't try things without him there in case my feelings for him changed while I was tripping. That was probably the biggest red flag, to be honest, and I skirted out of that relationship pretty fast. Skirt, skirt. Anyways, if you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos like this. Story 17. Well, the whole thing started off through an act of deception. He was a friend of a friend who I met one night when a big group of us went out together. He basically had me in a cab with him by purposely arranging the rides in such a way that he knew we would be left alone in there after the other two people, who lived close to the bar, got dropped off first. Shortly after getting to know him, he told me he, number 1, didn't believe in cancellation, number 2, didn't believe in pain control for women during labor, and number 3, didn't believe in giving his dog preventative medications. I'm not going with anyone who doesn't support my right to be in charge of my own. Dudes just don't get to have an opinion on number 2. Sorry. And your dog can get sick from bugs. That's just cruel, man. I'm sure if the topic of medicines had come up, I would not have enjoyed his stance in that either. Story 18. Went to see Bohemian Rhapsody with him. Halfway into the movie, he pulls out his phone, like full-on texting for almost 5 minutes. I don't care if you want to check a notification real quick, but this was a lot. But you know what? I can get over that. What sealed it was the fact that at the end of the movie, right when the Live Aid concert started, he took a phone call, like walked out of the theater to take it in the hallway. Very considerate of him. The call lasted so long I thought for a minute that the dude just left, but then I noticed his jacket was still on his seat. He came back in while the credits were rolling and said, "Oh man, I missed it, huh?" "Of course you missed it." Asked me if I wanted to go get some food with him as we were walking out. Nah, bruh. Story 19. One night while I was out with my friends, I ran into a guy I had recently gone on a few dates with. I wasn't all that interested in him. Nice guy, no chemistry. But as the night went on, my friends trickled back home and I was left alone with him. It was probably the drink talking, but I had one of the best nights I've ever had with him. Long story short, I ended up going back to his place. Once we got there, I decided I just wanted to sleep and he was pissed. Imagine me, I'm curled up in blankets in this guy's bed with my back facing him when he asks, "Are we really not going to be intimate?" I shrug and close my eyes, hoping he would leave me alone. Then out of nowhere, he pushes me out of his bed. I picked up my belongings and head for the door, but not before he yelled, "You're going to miss these 7 inches, for real." That was not good, Daniel. Story 20. I agreed to meet this guy at the movies to watch Assassin's Creed. A really bad movie, by the way. He arrived like 20 minutes late and he brought no money with him. Trying to be nice, I paid for both our tickets. I also got myself a bag of popcorn. He asked me if I could buy him his own bag of popcorn, which I replied with, "We can share mine." And he had the nerve to say he doesn't like sharing. Lol. I was already super pissed off at this point, but I already paid for the tickets, so I decided to bear with it and enjoy the movie. This couldn't get any worse, right? Wrong. When the movie was over, he asked me if he could go to my house and eat something. Needless to say, I didn't take him to my house and I never talked to him again. He even tried to invite me on another date a couple days later. Story 21. I had a guy warn me that he had a dominant personality and was very open-minded, that we shouldn't even go out on a date unless I was okay with that. He had been introduced to me from some friends I trusted, so tentatively I went ahead. Curious, I asked, "Just how open are you? Have you ever been with a man?" To which he said, "I don't know. Have you ever been with women?" At this point, I'm already rolling my eyes, but to end the conversation, I basically said it was a two-way street, and if he wasn't going to answer, why would I? To which he said, "Clearly, I'm too dominant for you since there always has to be a catch." What? What does that even mean? Seriously, what does that mean? Dude just wants an excuse to treat women like bad and call it dominance. Story 22. Told me, hey, it's okay if you don't want to date anyone since you just got out of an incredibly bad relationship. We can just be friends. Then proceeded to annoy me about it almost daily for a year and a half and used my escalating anger at having my boundaries constantly crossed as an excuse to try to manipulate me into a relationship, while claiming he had zero feelings for me and I was being a typical full-of-myself woman for thinking so. He didn't understand my jump from, I don't want to date anyone right now, to, okay, I don't want to date anyone but now, especially you. It didn't matter how often or nicely I explained it. We were roommates and sometimes he talked to me about it from when he got home around 11:30 p.m. until 8 in the morning. He still believed I'd get with him right up until I blocked him on everything after moving out. Some say he's still out there and you can hear him sometimes late at night. If the wind is coming at you, just write, you can't feel love. All women are the same. I'm not biased against women. Honestly, if he'd just given me the space like I'd asked for from day one, things might have been different. Most likely never would have dated, but would still be friends for sure, and he definitely wouldn't have gone fired over mistreating me at work. But that would require him to be a completely different type of person than he actually is. So, I'm glad he's out of my life. Dude was a giant walking yikes. I've never met or dated a man or woman so crazy. I think he's an incel now. Fellas, if she says no, just let it go. Story 23. I've told the story before, but when I was a teenager and he was the same age as me, or so I thought, we met at work and immediately got along. Being the romantic that I am, I fell for him completely. He wrote me notes, drove me around, and even met my family, who all loved him. We all went to a big fair in our town with my parents and some of their friends, and some of our friends met up with us there. We were having a great time until I was standing next to him and this woman came up screaming at me. Chaos followed. She was hurting him, screaming at me, and everyone thought she was just some crazy person. Everyone was yelling. My dad's friend, who was loud and intimidating, shouted for everyone to stop. It turned out she was his wife, and he was actually 27 years old. My dad was furious, as any dad might be when their daughter is hurt by a crazy wife and lied to. He threatened to have him arrested. My dad's friend held him back and told my now ex-boyfriend to leave before my dad could hurt him. I was crying, mortified and embarrassed. Everyone was trying to comfort me, telling me that it wasn't my fault. My innocent teenage heart was broken. He quit the job we both worked at, and 3 weeks later he showed up, saying he was divorcing his wife from me and asking me to run away with him. He promised to take care of me and said a bunch of other things. Well, guess whose dad was picking her up from work the day he happened to show up at the end of my shift? My dad pulled up, saw John talking to me, got out of his car and started chasing him. My dad was chasing this man around the fast food restaurant where I worked, with cars coming in and out. I was mortified again and just yelled at my dad to stop so he could leave. My dad was shouting to anyone who would listen that this man was a criminal. John eventually just ran down the street and kept going. I never saw him again. Story 24. I'm a girl and my best story isn't about a guy, but another girl. We were at her place after going on several dates and enjoying some chemistry. The plan was to hang out, have dinner, and then go to bed. I didn't have a car at the time, so I got dropped off. We had a nice meal with the roommates, who were a couple separate from us. We were chilling in the living room, having drinks, and passing around the grass. Everything was good. She had told me she was a free-spirited hippie type, and I was fine with a little grass and drinks for an enjoyable night in. But then her roommates brought out some other stuff. I felt uneasy. That triggered me for many reasons, and I wanted to leave. She did some and offered me some, but I declined, saying I was already feeling good from the drink and grass. I thought, I'm stuck here, as my excitement for the night turned into a desire to get out. After a while, she suggested we go to bed. I agreed because there wasn't much else to do, and the roommates had started bickering. We got ready for bed, and I just wanted to lay down and sleep. She went to the bathroom, and suddenly there was an argument. She was arguing with a female roommate while the dude was telling them to be quiet. It was chaos with yelling and furniture moving, and I was in the bedroom of an upper apartment without even a window to escape. The yelling stopped, and it got silent. I listened for any signs, but there was nothing. Then I realized they were quietly arguing in the kitchen. I grabbed my cell phone and texted a friend to come get me immediately. I figured it would take about 15 minutes for them to arrive, so I had to stay safe until then. After about 10 minutes, the girls seemed to have made up and were chatting in the kitchen, both clearly on some kind of stuff, but pretty calm. I pretended I needed to use the bathroom, grabbing my coat and purse. They just laughed at me like I was an unexpected guest in a TV show. I left the bathroom and ran down the stairs to my waiting ride. I would never do that again. I blocked her on all social media and never got a text or call from her. Last year, I learned that our use got worse. It was supposed to be a nice, fun sleepover, but it turned out very differently. Story 25. I had actually been seeing this guy for a while. and we went away to his parents' cabin in the Lake District. Turned out it was a terraced house in a village half an hour from where he lived, nowhere near the lakes. It was a tiny little village with no ATM, and he'd been saying to me for a while that he wanted to try this Michelin-starred pub there. So we went. When we got there was a sign saying their card machine was out of order, and I said that I hadn't any cash on me. He says, "Well, I'm still eating." Dude had a 3-course meal in front of me without even offering to lend me the money to pay for food for me. Bearing in mind we'd been seeing each other for 4 months, so it was not like he was never going to see me again. I sat there noping out the entire time, and when the waitress brought out dessert, she brought one for me. He points and says, "We didn't ask for that." And she just looks at him with a glare and says it's on the house. Texted my friend when I got back in signal range. She came and picked me up first thing in the morning. Also, that same evening, he was trying to start the log fire and failing. I showed him how to do it. He went into the kitchen and came back with a bowl of water and dumped it over the fire, saying, "If I can't do it, then we don't have a fire." Dodged. Story 26. I went on a Tinder date with a guy who would not stop talking. Like, in 1 hour, I may have said 2 complete sentences. Eventually, he started talking about how he works out a lot. I'm not a person who is really attracted to muscular men or interested in hearing about your workout routine, so I just sort of nodded along and kept saying, "Oh, okay," waiting for it to stop. Then he sticks out his arm to me and goes, "It's okay, you can feel." As if I was just wanting to grab his arm. I wasn't. Like, at all. Like, in the slightest. I cringed harder than I've ever cringed before, but I decided to just touch his bicep anyway and pretend to be impressed because I didn't want him to keep awkwardly talking about it. That's the exact moment I knew that would be our first and last meeting. Well, the fact that he never asked one question and also gave me a history of all the other girls he had been out with and why it didn't work out didn't help his case either, but yeah. Later, when he tried to come back to my place, I told him I was too tired. Then I never texted him again. Story 27. A guy that I'd been friends with for years told me that he'd always loved me, basically, but wanted to be together. He asked me to be his girlfriend right there on the spot. I told him that I'd like to give being with him a chance, but I wanted him to ask me on a date first instead of just jumping into being girlfriend and boyfriend. He told me that I'd known him for years and that I should already know whether or not I wanted to be his girlfriend, that we should just skip the dating part. I told him that a date is kind of like a trial run. It would give me an opportunity to get to know him as a romantic partner instead of a friend. He said that wasn't good enough. Told me to stop friend-zoning him and that he was over it, all in a very short time span. It was just dumb because he basically sabotaged himself. Story 28. I had a guy friend who had feelings for me, and he was an okay dude, but I just didn't like him like that. He'd flirted with me in the past and I'd reject him, but we stayed friends. Anyway, one day we were hanging out and he suddenly started talking about how he still thinks about what it would have been like if we dated, and started rattling off all the things he should have done differently in the past to win me over. I kind of laughed and said it wasn't anything he'd done or not done. I just wasn't interested. He then told me I was wrong and said that if he'd just been a little more persistent, I would have realized what a good guy he was and given him a chance. It slowly dawned on me that he was a nice guy. Suddenly, all the weird things he always said made sense. Stuff like him emphasizing how nice he always is to women when he was actually rather misogynistic, getting upset when he would be nice to female friends and not getting a date out of it, making generalized statements about women, always correcting and arguing with me and other women, and his very frequent self-pity and lack of self-awareness. He would whine to me all the time about girls who wouldn't go out with him even after he listed off all the reasons why they should. I tried to tell him that the "you should listen to me because I know better than you" approach to dating doesn't work too well. But I was just wrong about that too, I guess. Anyway, I told him it's really insulting to be told that my own feelings are wrong, and that I'm not some robot who just needs the right series of commands to activate love.x. We maintained a tense friendship for a few more months, during which he grew increasingly bitter over my lack of interest in him and lack of positive response to his come-ons. It ended in an argument where he found out I started dating someone else. We're no longer friends, and he's the main reason I'm wary of making male friends now. Story 29. I went on a first date with a guy who seemed really sweet, family-oriented, and close with his mom. I drove an hour to meet him for dinner, and to see how things would go. When I met him, I knew that I wasn't going to be interested. We just weren't compatible. He tried to do everything by looking at me for my approval, which, as sweet as that is, just be yourself. He was adamant that we needed to have a table on the deck outside that overlooked the lake, which was sweet of him. That is until I realized he kept looking at another table behind him. At first, I thought he was one of those guys that needed to look at everything, or a tactical need to know the exits guys, which in their own rights are very impressive people. Nope, he had invited his sister and mother to sit at a table near us to evaluate if I would be indeed an agreeable partner. The big tip-off was when he kept looking back at one girl, which is rude if you're looking at another girl on a date, but upon further inspection looked a lot like him. She gave him the thumbs up. He turned around very proud of himself and said he really digged our vibe. I paid for my own meal and never pursued a second date. That really is weird. Guess he wasn't able to get the memo of not bringing a chaperone to a date. Story 30. I met a guy on POF. It was my first time ever using a dating site. I was new to the area and wanted to meet new people outside of my only girlfriend I had known from living in Florida prior. I wanted to meet people outside of my comfort zone. He picked me up in a really cool old school 1960s Corvette. It was really attractive and tall. Conversation is going great. We arrived at the restaurant. He tells me he can't drink due to an injury and I should order a drink if I wanted. I ordered a drink and we got to chit-chatting some more. This is when things get weird. He tells me the reason for his injury is that he's a semi-pro wrestler for ICP, Insane Cloud Posse. I knew of ICP as a music group who painted their faces like clowns and rapped. The entire day it was him showing me videos of himself wrestling on YouTube. He asked if I like his beard. It was kind of like chin strap type facial hair. Being polite, I told him it looked nice. He told me he spent an hour drawing on his beard for our date. I ordered a second drink. He goes on to tell me about his wrestling career, who he made up himself. It was a guy who acts crazy in the ring, tweaking out. He shows me more YouTube videos. Seriously, an hour and a half of YouTube videos of him wrestling at ICP matches. I ordered a third drink. He makes a comment about me ordering another drink. I assume because he doesn't want me racking up a tab. The drinks are $8. No biggie. I was more than happy to pay for my meal and drinks. He actually assumed I wanted to go back to his house and watch a movie. Possibly more wrestling videos? It's a hard no from me. I text my girl SOS and she comes to the restaurant to rescue me. When she comes to get me, he freaks out, makes a scene and tells me I was using him for a free meal, flips the patio chair and table in a Hulk-like rage. Me and my girl ran to her car and the next hour was messaging me via POF. I gave up on meeting new people on dating sites after that. Story 31. When I was in high school, this dude made it very clear he was interested in me, through hints. He never outright said it. I would always hint back that I wasn't interested, primarily because I had a pretty serious boyfriend at the time. Boyfriend and I break up, this dude who'd been trying to put the moves on me becomes persistent, and I start trying to distance myself, making as little conversation with him as possible, ignoring his texts sometimes and basically doing whatever I could to make him understand I did not like him in any way, while trying to keep the tenuous threads of my various friend groups unbroken. This all comes to a head one week in early spring. He's in photography class and has taken to carrying his camera around with him everywhere. On Monday of this week, he gets special permission from the coach to come to the gym and do some in-motion photography for a project during his photography period, which just so happened to be my physical education period. I didn't mind this too much. My friends and I just walked laps around the gym while he was up in the stands, blessedly far away. Suddenly, as we round a corner, he literally jumps down from the bleachers, snaps a picture of us, me, and walks away without saying a word, then leaves the gym very soon after. Then no word or acknowledgement from him for about 3 days. Friday that week, he walks up to me while I'm waiting for a friend to finish at her locker so we can walk to class together, places a handmade envelope with my name on it on top of the stacks of books I was holding, opens his mouth to say something, and then just power walks away from me as quickly as possible. Inside was probably the most ridiculous love letter I've ever read in my life. It was 2 front and back pages of very small, straight handwriting written on sketchbook paper, detailing the first time he'd ever seen me, how he knew from that moment forward he wanted to spend the rest of his life with me, how our wedding would play out, down to the color palette of my dress, the names of our kids. But the worst part? An extremely accurate pencil drawing of me in his art style on the last page, sitting at a desk concentrating on something. That's the worst part because we had never had a class together at this point, and the only pictures he had of me were in gym class. He literally imagined me in this pose and drew it off the dome, and every line was detail perfect. He never spoke to me again. Have you ever gotten an ick from a potential partner or love interest that instantly ended your attraction to them? If so, what happened? First date, I was filling my gas tank and she started going through my phone. I saw her doing it but continued to fill the gas as she read my text messages. I'm a fairly open person with little to hide, but I do value trust and honesty. As soon as the pump clicked off, she put it back in a hurry. I skipped the dinner plans and dropped her home. I didn't address it immediately. She didn't know I was driving towards her house until we got super close, at which point we had maybe 2 minutes left together. In a calm and I'm disappointed in you tone, I told her I caught her in the act and that this blatant breach of privacy was a deal breaker for me. I added that she's too old to be acting like an insecure teenager. She was 26, and that she should address this behavior before pursuing serious relationships. She knew she was in the wrong. She stayed quiet until we got back and left the car without a word. If I can't even trust you with my phone, I can't trust you with my future. Still no apology though. Story 2. I dated a guy who seemed chill but kept talking about social media and how people or exes were scheming against him. I believed him at first until it got to a point where he thought things like a photo someone put up was an indicator that they were getting him back, when these people were literally just doing normal things and posting normal stuff. I think he was schizophrenic, but it was really unsettling. Months later, he rang me out of the blue to ask me about a link between his ex, myself, and a friend. The link was butterflies, and because of this link, he thought we were conspiring against him. Story 3. I went on a date with a seemingly nice guy in my early 20s. It went well, so after dinner, we cuddled in the back seat of his car in a quiet country area listening to music. He gently played with my hand and fingers and gave me a little massage. So relaxing. When he got to my wrist, he looked at it, flipped it around a few times and said in a creepy voice, "It'd be so easy for me to break this right now." It was maybe 2007. I don't remember in detail what happened next. I kind of just played it off like, "Tee-hee, you're so strong," until he took me home. I tried to de-escalate, so I didn't acknowledge that statement too much. I just kept the conversation moving to something else and was careful not to embarrass or upset him. I didn't keep seeing him. I was busy for the next dates he asked me on and then acted as boring as possible until he eventually lost interest in me. We went to college together and were in ROTC together, so avoiding was kind of hard. He started a relationship with someone else pretty quickly after that. Story 4. Went on a date with a guy I met at a party. He made me prove that I liked Lord of the Rings by answering who said what when he quoted someone. He pulled out a notebook of really poorly drawn anime characters and asked me if he could draw me. He was a lot shorter than me and asked if it bothered me. I said no. Then he said, "Good, I like Amazonian goddesses." He kept trying to put his jewelry onto me despite my protests. He asked what I wanted to order for food, then ignored me and ordered me something else, and got frustrated and didn't eat at all. He referenced being arrested, made me guess what for, and when I refused to guess for not knowing him well enough, he said GBH. He was a trainee doctor and asked if I'd ever broken any bones. When I replied yes, he said that he was going to look up my x-rays. And the icing on the cake, when I wanted to leave, he got my knee-high boots, slipped them onto my feet, zipped them up, and said, "You should always be treated like a goddess, my Morticia Adams." All in one date. Story 5. Yeah, I went on a date with a girl who seemed perfectly fine. She was really nice and made interesting conversation, clearly cared and put effort into the date, but then halfway through she gets a call on her Bluetooth headset, which I hadn't even noticed beneath her hair. I don't know why, but it turned me off so quickly. It was a coworker calling too, and she started discussing some clearly stressful topic, planning a meeting or something. They got to near arguing, and she kept rolling her eyes and sort of half winking at me every time the coworker said something that annoyed her. She ended up saying she had seen a car crash and had to run, which weirdly got me back into her a bit since that's a slick move. But then immediately called another coworker to complain about the first one, and kept winking at me. This was all on a Saturday morning, by the way. One of the weirdest dates I've ever been on. Story 6. Literally every single problem she had was someone else's fault. Even when there was proof it was her fault, she would argue nonstop that it was someone else's. She got in a car wreck and called insurance over and over again to tell them it was the other person's fault. They checked the computer in her car because it saved her speed right before the wreck. It told them everything they needed to know, and she still denied it. Story 7. Oh my god. I went on a date with a guy who loved showing how wealthy he was. We went to a carnival and he was pulling cash out of the ATM. As I stood somewhere close by, he pissed me over and was like, "Check it out." He had a whole $4,000 in his account. Then later in the day, he showed me text messages between him and his mother where he was bragging about me being fat, and his mom was like, "Get it." Like, what the heck? I noped out. He would message me constantly after that. Weird dude. Story 8. Went on a date with an outwardly normal girl. We started kissing and getting frisky back at her place, and she started meowing and acting cat-like. It was little mews at first, then leading on to her stopping and licking her fingertips. She saw me make a face and questioned why I'd made a face. I was straight up and said, "Because you're pretending to be a cat?" She said, "Oh, was I? Sometimes it takes over when I'm excited." We tried again. She mewed again, and I noped out of there pretty quickly after that. Story 9. In college, I was seeing a girl who lived in student residence with me, but on another floor. She would always talk about how another guy, Tom, on her floor, was obsessed with her and would show me texts between them. She said she only talked to him because he's harmless and that they're friends. I never met him. After a week, her ex-friend from high school pulled me aside and told me not to trust her. She said that the girl I was seeing is a notorious liar and that Tom doesn't exist. That she added her own number in her phone as Tom, would text herself and then delete the sent messages. The only reason her ex-friend knew is because she saw the text message exchange happen in the reflection of a mirror when they were in the same room. I was close to the front desk and asked if they could look up the names from that floor. They said yes and told me that there was no guy named Tom on her floor. I noped out of that real quick. Story 10. She started to set up the relationship in a way that made me her emotional punching bag, where I was to blame for any bad feelings she had. Nothing I could do or say in those moments could ever help the situation because that wasn't my purpose in her life. I was the distraction from her own issues she refused to acknowledge. Her extreme moods weren't because of her or her past, but it was because I said something the wrong way or laid on the clean sheets of the sweaty body. The ick came about when I realized that at 40 years old, that this has always been the pattern in my relationships with women, and it has everything to do with how my mom treated me. She had her own massive trauma from being horribly mistreated as a child, but used that as a shield to use me as her emotional and physical punching bag when she was in a bad mood. "You're not being mistreated, I was mistreated," was a line I heard constantly as she beat me on a regular basis. Once I saw that for what it was, it disgusted me. But it also changed how I handle relationships now, and now I'm happily married for 2 years to a wonderful woman who never does that to me. Story 11. I had 2 rounds of dating him because I really liked him. The first go-around, I brought him home with me after our second date. I definitely planned on sleeping with him, but during foreplay, he went down on me, and he was so rough, it was super unenjoyable and borderline painful. I kept telling him over and over to slow down and be more gentle, but he just didn't listen. It was like he was mimicking porn he'd watched. It totally ended the mood and my interest in him. I told him that I wasn't interested in dating someone who wouldn't listen to my needs and wants in the bedroom. Months later, he hit me up and I agreed to go out with him again. I thought maybe he had considered what I said before. I met him at a great local spot to watch a basketball game. We'd initially connected over a love of the same team. Spent a lot of time getting ready for the date. Looked nice, smelled nice. He shows up after me, and the first thing I notice is that he's dressed rather carelessly. Specifically, he was wearing this old B2 zip-up hoodie, which is like, ugh, not a deal breaker. Then he sits next to me and we share a quick hug, and bam, that was it. I was done. He stank. He absolutely reeked of cigarettes, and his breath was awful, like he hadn't even brushed his teeth. Still had a good time with him, watching the game and eating wings and fries, but it was immediately not a romantic thing for me. It was just watching a game with a buddy. I'm still really disappointed even now because, like I said, I really liked him. He was super sweet and really liked me back. He just didn't seem mature enough to be in an actual relationship with. Bummer. Story 12. When I was in my senior year of high school, the son of one of my mom's work friends, who was my age, was into me. I wasn't as into him, but he seemed nice enough, and I went on a single date with him. The reason there was no second date? He kept trying to find out if I was still pure or not. His reasoning was that if I wasn't, then it wouldn't matter if we had intimacy on the first date, and if I was, he would work for it. I didn't tell him one way or another because it was none of his darn business, and his reasoning was utterly pathetic. I never spoke to him again after I called a cab and went home. Story 13. When I was 16, I awkwardly ended up third-wheeling a really embarrassing date. The dude turned up in a white suit, blue sunglasses, and a trilby. It was so jarring that I started cracking up in the car as we drove past the restaurant entrance. Who shows up to a date looking like a cross between Michael Jackson and Guy Fieri? If he was a nice dude, or at least caring, then I guess I could have let that slip, but he absolutely would not stop talking about how he was the best at literally anything and everything. He talked so much that my friend and I had finished our food before he'd even started his. The guy kept insisting that he was the best in the world, a guitar hero, and kept showing us screenshots of the leaderboard. Like, we cared. I know we were only 16, but it was really embarrassing. Man, I've never felt so much secondhand embarrassment. I don't know how that guy turned out, but I'm going to stalk him on Facebook to see if he ever changed. Story 14. He turned out to be anti-feminist, anti-LGBT, and an Andrew Tate fan. Ugh, we had bonded over our mutual love for Star Wars, and this info just ended any feelings. It was so gosh darn hot, too. Like, darn, I wanted to climb him like a tree, but I cannot stand those toxic, let's revive our masculinity or inner alpha stuff. He posted, "Women are meant to breed, not lead." Made me instantly rage. He had a problem if girls offered to split the bill. He always wanted to pay. I guess some people are okay with it and find it generous, but I've always split my bills, so I let it slide a few times, but every single time he'd insist. I mean, let me pay my share, dude. I don't like freeloading. Story 15. Yeah, he wore his hat to bed. Let me be clear, not a bonnet or wave cap, a legit hat. Sometimes woven, sometimes with an actual brim. The same hat he'd been wearing all day came to bed with him. There were other things, but he never went bareheaded. He had hair, but his head was shaped like someone went really hard with a forceps to get him out when he was born. A real almond of a noggin. He also didn't tuck in dress shirts. Fine in some occasions, and tied ties like he was 5. I didn't need to dress for an office job, but I found myself wondering what it would be like if our relationship progressed and I wound up walking down the aisle to a man wearing a shirt like a dress, with a tie that hung lower than his pants, wearing a baseball cap or beanie on our wedding day. Couldn't handle it. Also, the intimacy was terrible and he was a lousy communicator. But the hat in bed, though. Story 16. The dude was in the bathroom for a while, clearly taking a dump, no big deal. Lived in a weird little apartment where the only sink was in the kitchen. He comes out and doesn't immediately go to wash his hands. I ask him about it. It starts a small argument where he then refused to wash his hands because he was going to, but then it made him feel like a child, so now he has to make a point. All attraction lost in the very second. So freaking gross. Can't believe I let poop hands touch me. I want to retch so bad. Hygiene is important, folks. The little things indicate how you go about the big things. Story 17. I dated this girl once for a short while, a month or so, and I visited her home once while her family was out of town. It was just a mess and smelled bad because she had a lot of pets. Birds, cats, a micro pig, and some very neglected dogs. The doggies were matted, smelly, and seeking love and attention. I inquired about the dogs, and she said, "I don't know, they're not mine." When I said goodnight later from the car, she leaned in to kiss me, but I just didn't feel connected anymore. I called her later and asked her more about the dogs. They were her father's, and he was never around. Her sisters, and she didn't care for them, so after a couple of nights I stole the dogs and took them to a rescue shelter. They're currently with a new loving home, and the girl's family never even flinched at the dogs not being there anymore. I broke it off a few weeks later once I knew they were blissfully ignorant of their dogs being gone. She was a sweet girl and liked me a lot, with loads of affection, but I couldn't be with someone who could just ignore some innocent lives that way. Critics? Story 18. He faked seizures our entire relationship to get out of helping me with chores and cooking meals. We dated for less than a year. I found out from his friends and family that he had never had a seizure in front of them. One night, I came home after working a double, asked him to please try making dinner. I found him asleep and woke him up to let him know I was home and to ask about dinner. He said he had a seizure. This caused an argument where he admitted he faked it. He used to say seizures were caused by flashing lights. I took him to countless doctors, and no one could replicate what I saw all the time. After he admitted it finally clicked. He had been faking it the whole time. Story 19. I'd been seeing them, mostly in public. We'd met on an app, and I was still figuring out if we fit. For over a month. They were pressing for more time together, a deeper connection and exclusivity when they asked to reschedule a proposed date activity because they needed to take their daughters to the dentist that day. Kids? We'd been talking for hours on marathon dates and texting whenever we weren't together for like 7.5 weeks. What kids? You have kids? Kids are not a deal breaker? Hiding your 3 children from someone you've asked for a commitment is a massive deal breaker. Story 20. This guy I used to go to school with added and messaged me out of the blue on Facebook, asking me on a date. It was cute and nice from what I remembered, so I said yes, and we continued to casually chat back and forth in the days leading up to the date. I'd mentioned I'd just gone to make a cup of tea, and he asked me how I took my tea. And I told him he got aggressively insistent that I made a tea wrong because, and I quote, "That's not the traditional British way. It just rubbed me the wrong way." A warning bell went off in my head because it was so strangely aggressive for such a trivial thing. So I told him never mind on the date. I ended up having to block him because he took the rejection about as well as he took the tea. Story 21. I knew this Mormon girl and she was always smoking hot. I had a thing for her but couldn't get past her religion. After we graduated, she went straight to college and had an awakening. She came back for summer and immediately hit me up and several of my bros to fool around. She wanted it so bad that she came over to our place and sat at our kitchen table, attempting to talk us into bed with her. On a weekday. Sober. It was weird and we said no and asked her to leave. I think I would have been into it if she was looking at just me, but the fact that she was practically wearing a sign that said open for business and not even hiding that she was trying to sleep with any of my friends who would have intimacy with her made it not my thing. Story 22. My ex-husband gained a lot of weight because he chose not to take care of himself and ate enough for 3 people each meal. That concerned me for his health. Then one night I brought home dinner and instead of sitting at the table with me, he took his food into the bedroom, lay completely flat in the bed, put his food container in his chest and ate dinner like that. It was the most disgusting thing I'd ever seen him do. His laziness was completely off the wall and he only ever made excuses about it. My feelings for him had already been wavering due to a ton of other reasons, but that was the nail in the coffin. I could never look at him the same ever again. Story 23. I met a woman on Tinder a few years back and we hit it off really well. About a week after we had met, she deleted and blocked me in all forms of social media with little to no explanation. I was texting her on my iPhone and after she sent one last text, it went from iMessage blue to regular text green. After that, I messaged her again a few hours later and heard nothing. I checked my Snapchat, Facebook, and Instagram and couldn't find her anywhere. I panicked because I thought I had genuinely connected with her, but after a day or two, I calmed down and thought, if this is some kind of test, I'm out. Forget this high school BS. So I fired up Bumble and Tinder again and matched with someone on Bumble who showed genuine interest in me and started an awesome conversation. The next morning, I got a text from the original woman and she literally said, "I see you're back on Tinder." I made a fake account to see if he would get back on, and sure enough, there you are. I laughed at myself because I knew immediately I had dodged a massive bullet. I responded essentially saying, "Well, you blocked me on all social media and my number. How was I supposed to know you'd reach out?" She literally said, "It was supposed to be a test of your loyalty and you failed. I can never be with someone who would start talking to other women immediately after something so trivial." I responded saying, "All right, sounds good. Have a good one." Then blocked her myself. Oh, and the woman I began talking to on Bumble immediately after the first one blocked me, we'll be celebrating 3 years of marriage and 5 years total together this upcoming September. I went from a crazy woman to the most wonderful person I've ever met in my life. Talk about an upgrade. If you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos like this. Story 24. For some context, I'm over 40. Dating at my age is, well, after this experience, I just gave up, really. I was seeing a guy last year. We met through a mutual interest and he asked me out. We got on well and I was hopeful. What did raise some concerns was that he mentioned he'd never had a relationship last very long, so I was cautious, but things started off well enough. The first time we properly kissed, it was like he was trying to swallow my entire face. I mentioned it was a bit full on and asked him to be more gentle. It worked for a few moments, and then it was back to the face eating. Despite this, and probably stupidly, I persevered. It was generous, sweet, and into the same sorts of things as me. I guess I wanted it to work. The first time I went to his house and stayed over just ended everything. Although he owned his own place and owned business and had his stuff together financially, his house was unsettlingly juvenile. It was tidy and spotlessly clean, but it was like a bachelor pad for a 12-year-old. And after an evening, chatting, cuddling, and watching movies, we went to bed. Turns out that his kissing wasn't the only terrible thing. He also had problems keeping it firm. Absolutely 100% down to anxiety, but he would just completely zone out and totally ignore my requests to be more gentle and slow down. I eventually had to yell to finally get him to stop after gently asking him to stop, no effect. And that absolutely grossed me out. I broke up with him the next day after a sleepless night lying next to him, feeling a mix of anger, pity, and disgust. Not because of the ED problem, but the fact his ego overtook my identity as a person and I just felt like a thing he was desperate to conquer to prove something to himself. I'm still grossed out now and have had absolutely no desire to try and get intimate with anybody since then. I appreciate that it's not easy for a bloke in that position, but it messed me up too. He was shorter than me and still strong enough to pin me down. Story 25. I don't know if this counts, but hear me out. There was a girl I dated for over a year. We were very happy, never fought, and after a while we planned on moving in together. At one point I even brought a ring and planned to propose to her. The day before I was going to propose and a week before we moved in together, she broke it off because she was worried we wanted different things in life. I was ready to settle down and have kids. She still wanted to go to the bars twice a week and didn't want to be accountable to anyone, and there's nothing wrong with that. So we broke up. Then, 48 hours later, she wanted to get back together. Still loved her, so we got back together with no plans of getting married, which is what scared her in the first place. We moved in together and things were going fine for about 1.5 months. Then we were planning to go out for dinner, and when I got home, she was crying and wanted to break up again for the same reasons. We actually continued to live together as just friends, and things were okay. One day, just the two of us went shopping together and had a blast doing it. Afterward, we went to a nice restaurant and just overall had a good night. We got home and I went to my bed. A few minutes later, she came in, got into the bed, and started kissing me and trying to have intimacy. In that moment, instant ick. 1.5 years of loving this girl, wanting to be with her and her rejecting me twice. Then suffering as just being friends in the same house. We go out and have a good evening together as just friends, and then she wanted to have intimacy. It just felt like everything was on her terms and I was being used. I just saw straight through it all in that moment, lying there in the dark room, looking at her. I had zero issues moving on after that, and she actually moved out of the house shortly after that night. Story 26. Not a serious relationship, but a casual thing. We only knew each other for about 4 months, and he pooped his pants twice in that time period. The first time I was like, okay, people get sick and things happen, and tried to let it go. But the second time, he texted me to tell me about it and said it happened as he was walking out of the bathroom. It never happened around me, but he would tell me about it and also bring it up in front of my friends. He thought it was very funny and normal for a grown man to do. He also once farted during intimacy, which I ignored because things happen, but then proceeded to bring it up after and wouldn't let the conversation go. He was proud of it. There were so many other issues with him that were red flags, but that was enough for me to nope out. Story 27. Recently, actually, I met a guy at a college event. He was very handsome, dressed well, super charismatic, and sweet. I usually don't get much attention from guys outside of a friendship, so I was starstruck. He took me on a wonderful date, straight out of a movie. For the second day, we went to his apartment he shared with his grandma. All was going well. We were kissing. It was my first kiss, and then he got on top of me and started rambling about, "This is fate. I love you. I can't hold back anymore." I instantly tried to escape, but he wouldn't let me leave, so I started crying. He finally let me leave, and then on my birthday, he texted my mom, begging me to have me back. All attraction lost. Story 28. Oh, I have one for this. I dated this girl one summer, and things were going well. One day, she decided to show me her tap dancing, and for some reason, I just really did not like it. I told her it was cool and all, and kept my true feelings to myself. She kept doing these little tap dancing routines from when she was in middle school all the time after that, and I hated it. But this is not all. The nail in the coffin was she tried telling me creamy was a flavor and not a texture. She decided to really press the issue and was adamant about this. So random, but it ended any remaining attraction I had for her. Story 29. I went on a few dates with a girl a few years back, and she would consistently make disparaging comments about homeless people and how she was scared of them. I live in New York City, and homelessness has definitely gotten more widespread in the past 5 years, but the vast majority of homeless people are just normal people who cannot afford housing. I had a friend in college who was homeless, and I've had homeless employees in the past. Her comments really just showed a basic lack of empathy. I've been on dates with multiple girls who say crappy things about homeless people, and it's an instant turn off. Story 30. I missed a call from her on my cell phone, so she called the landline at my parents' house because I was home from college on break. I'd never given her that number. She hadn't been there, met my folks, or known anyone else that would have been able to give her that number either. I hadn't even told her I'd gone back to my hometown and she lived a few hours away. I didn't answer the phone because I recognized her number on the caller ID and was dumbfounded. She called 5 more times, back to back. I answered none of them and broke things off completely shortly thereafter. Story 31. I started talking to a girl off a dating site. Things were going pretty well, despite the fact that she insisted on using WhatsApp because that's the platform her friends used. And one day while I was at work, she messaged me, but I wasn't able to respond because I was working. 10 minutes later, she tried again, then by text, then by DMing me through the dating site, all within 15 minutes. She even started asking if I was ignoring her. When I got home and saw the messages and timeline, I was pretty put off, so I told her, "Hey, sorry I was at work and couldn't reply. That bomb of messages in such a short span of multiple platforms is a little bit of a concern and set off a couple red flags for me." At which point she called me a schmuck and blocked me. No losses there. Sorry to whichever person ends up with that crazy woman. Story 32. I saw her in Saneside when we went out drinking together for the first time. She didn't like that I talked to another girl while waiting in the line to get to a club. She spent the whole night ignoring me while trying to make me jealous by dancing with other people. She refused to talk to me most of the night and ran away like a child whenever I tried to talk to her. She insulted me whenever she did talk. She was also having periodic crying fits. This behavior could be chalked up to alcohol, but by the morning I was completely done. No more feelings. Story 33. I met her for the first time at a cafe. She brought her best friend along, which is fine, and from a safety standpoint, not a bad idea when meeting someone for the first time. Anyway, this thing was most likely rehearsed beforehand, and they probably saw it played out on TV or in a movie sometime. My date excused herself to go to the bathroom. Now, typically, that's where women go to the bathroom as at least a pair. From my understanding, it's the custom for chatting or whatnot, but not this time. My date went alone, and the best friend stayed. The best friend leans in and says, "If you hurt her, I will hunt you down," or something to that effect. Now, I sort of get the intent of it, and I've seen this before on TV. It's supposed to be kind of this funny little moment, but her delivery was off, and it was super serious and creepy. I got the ick, and I knew that I wasn't going to come back from it. When the day came back, I put some money on the table, shook her hand, and wished her luck, and left. I didn't really feel it was necessary to explain as they probably could figure it all out, and by then, I was over it. Story 34. Oh god. As an actively looking single woman, I have a bunch of these. These are all different guys from POF. Spent a couple of weeks chatting with a cute and cool dude I really wanted to meet. He described himself as living in an old house with several pets. I got there to discover the old house was a tiny, decrepit trailer that was new in the LBJ administration, and the several pets was 10 dogs, and I don't know how many cats were in it. I could smell the stench from the yard, you guys. I did a 180 and left without a word. Who the heck thinks it's a good idea to invite potential partners over to your animal horde trailer that stinks so bad you can smell it outside? I chatted with a guy over text for a couple of days, then he says, "Let's talk on the phone." Okay. His voice, mannerisms, and the way of speaking sounded exactly like my very cruel ex from 30 years ago. He even used some of the same phrases. It gave me the creeps, big time. I hadn't talked to him again after that, and I imagine he probably wasn't happy. He texted me like 20 times for a couple of days after. "I'm sorry, Hank, I just can't have a mini PTSD flashback every time I hear you speak." I texted and video chatted with a really gorgeous guy. Clicked really well, and there was some serious flirting going on. I was really into him. I was like, crap, this is gonna happen. I met him in person. Things were going well until he kissed me. Terrible. He said some weird things and it was kind of a rough touch. I made an excuse and bounced before I went any further. I talked to a guy who at first I thought was a scammer, but since he claimed to live in my tiny town, I actually went to meet up with him. Holy crap, he's real. And holy crap, he's intoxicated and smells like dog crap. I often caress that delete account button on POF and think about how many cats I can realistically afford to care for, rather than spend money and time trying to find a boyfriend. Story 35. Within a conversation, I briefly mentioned that I viewed their family as very well off, to which they jumped back and scoffed, saying, "Me? Well off? We're poor." I realized that I guess I shouldn't have assumed and said, "Oh, I mean, I kind of just assumed because, you guys got 2 houses, like 6 cars? And I mean, in the last few months, you guys went to Japan and Austria for family vacations." They said, "Well, yeah, but like my friends, most of them have 4 houses. So-and-so has a house here in town, a lake house, a beach house, and an apartment in New York City." I was fully expecting them to say it was because they were actually bankrupt or their parents recently got laid off and they were struggling or something along those lines. But no, they just had zero sense of reality and were extremely sheltered. Immediate nope from me. Signed, someone who grew up below the poverty line. Story 36. I went on a date with a guy that was pretty nice and we were having a good time and connecting. We saw a movie and then decided to get dinner after at some fast food type place. When we got up to the cashier, he turned around and said to me in a bitter, awkward tone, "Women have feminism now and want to be equal to men, so I think it's fair you pay for your own food." Couldn't figure out why I ghosted him afterwards and made a bunch of Facebook posts about how no woman wanted to be with him. Like, he could have asked me to cover my own food without going into a weird feminism rant. Story 37. We both dislike texting, and since we live near each other, we usually bump into each other in person and don't need to text. We had a date planned, and that ended up not being able to make, which is fine. Life happens. I figured we'd reschedule next time we see each other. Problem is, we both work a lot and didn't see each other for about a week and a half. Screw it, we have the technology. I texted her to reschedule. No reply. A couple days later, we finally bumped into each other, and she said she thought it was gross that I texted her. As best I can tell, my texting her gave her the ick, and the fact that she got the ick from something so innocuous gave me the ick. Ultimately, it probably saved us both some time. Story 38. Many years ago, I went out on a date with a woman I met in college. She was incredibly attractive, and I was very interested in her. So we went out on a date, had a nice evening planned, a movie and dinner at a nice, and to me, extremely expensive restaurant. I picked her up at home, and we headed out. It was a fairly long drive to where we were going, maybe 45 minutes. The whole time, all she talked about was old boyfriends, what kind of cars they drove, how much money they made, etc. Everything was about appearance and wealth. She was born to a rich family, drove a really nice car, and had never had a job. I was from a poor family and barely had 2 nickels to rub together. After about a half an hour, I had it. I got off the freeway, turned left at the end of the off-ramp, crossed over the freeway, and got back and going back the way we came. She asked what the heck was up. I told her something like, "This isn't going to work. All you care about is money and how things look. I don't care about any of that stuff. We're just not tethered to the same world. Let's just both of us pretend like none of this ever happened." She cried all the way home. It didn't bother me a bit. A couple of years later, I met the woman I eventually married. I hit the jackpot that day. Story 39. I went to a guy's house for dinner once. It was a hoarder's paradise. He vacuumed and cleaned before I came over. Only the trails between the piles of stuff, maybe. There were 9 dogs inside. I lost count of how many were outside, and there was no back door in his house. Everything was covered in dirt. There were no windows at all. The toilet didn't flush. It seemed the only running water in the house was the bathtub. Maybe the washer on the front porch had water. Didn't check there. Dinner was served in the dining area. There was no kitchen in the house, and the dining room table was stacked so high with junk I couldn't see him sitting across from me. I balanced my plate in my lap, dropping bites of food onto the floor where the dogs ate it because I was afraid to eat it, wondering where it was cooked. Did he wash his hands for this plate? Too many things. I left immediately after and never returned. It was like 20 years ago. Smells are still in my nose. Story 40. I talked for a while on Tinder and had our first date at a museum. When I first saw her, I didn't even think it was her and nearly walked past her. It was weird because I don't think she manipulated any of her photos, but her face definitely looked far different in them. She'd also sent intimate pictures before that, but they never showed her face. She wasn't super ugly, but it was startling not seeing what I expected, and I got turned off almost immediately. However, I tried rationalizing it and told myself we had a good time chatting, so I went through the date and it went well. However, the real thing that ended it was when I went into her apartment. It immediately smelled like crap. Really bad. Immediately to the left of the door was a puppy pad with a mess all over it. Then I looked at the carpet in the living area and it was just one giant stain. She had a cat and a blind dog, both of which used the bathroom forever and were also both total schmucks, even to her. At the time, we were only stopping by her place for 1 minute before doing something else. I knew immediately that I wasn't going to continue a relationship with her, but I didn't really want her to think it was because of that. She was a veterinarian and also tended to be a virtue signaler. I knew if I called her out on it, she would try to turn it around on me and try to guilt trip me for not liking her because she sees herself as virtuous for taking care of a poor blind dog. Eventually, I broke things off that day and never gave her reasons. She even messaged me a week later, pleading for a reason, but there was no way I was going to admit that I thought she was absolutely disgusting. Story 41. I was dating a guy for a few months. Very handsome and charming. At one point, I had a couple of friends over, a few of whom were also trans like myself. The topic of wrestling came up. It turns out one of my friends also wrestled in high school back when she presented as male. My boyfriend was elated. He also wrestled and wanted to challenge her to a wrestling match. I was all for it and thought it was a fun idea. I'd seen him be quite competitive in the past, so a little friendly competition was nothing new coming from him. Within seconds, she absolutely wrecked him, to which he decided to have a little outburst, an absolute tantrum. He did this weird scream or growl hybrid thing, then kicked the closest object to him before leaving to cool off. I had never felt so much secondhand embarrassment in my life. It was truly like watching the antisocial kid transform into a wolf during a confrontation. Full-blown ick. Story 42. I had been seeing a girl for a few weeks and was away on a business trip. One night, at about 2 a.m. my time, I got a call from her. She was panicking. saying her roommate and she got into a fight and she needed a place to stay. Such a silly reason to get into a fight, too. She proceeded to tell me she was parked in front of my house and I needed to let her in, fully knowing that I was out of town. She begged me for my garage code or if I had a hidden key so that she could get in. I feel like she probably looked for one before calling me. She had only been to my house once before and it was so early in the relationship I had zero trust for her. No, you may not stay in my house without me there. I said to her, "You're almost 30. You can handle this. Get a hotel or call a friend who's home." What is the biggest red flag in a guy? From the relationship I've had, here are some red flags I've noticed. Excessive substance use. It will escalate and keep doing so don't kid yourself. This is an all-day, everyday habit, but they deny it's the reason they're struggling so much. Slightly sexist, misogynistic, or homophobic comments. They're either an uninformed idiot, a potential exploiter, or both. A lack of drive to change themselves or their situation. They cannot be challenged in their viewpoints because to them, it's not right. Outward anger. Stress from a situation is turned outwardly to the people around them, often making others miserable or blaming someone for what's happened. For example, I was inconsiderate and a nag because I wanted more help with housework when I was the only one working full-time and all he'd do was cook dinner and get high, partially on my dime. Then I was a bully when I got angry and shouted back, which was not usual, after weeks of snide comments and took away the substance I paid for. The statement, "Keep dating because I don't want to stop you from meeting people." Sudden behavior change. Acting one way for a while and then seeming to change in an instant always makes me cautious. Story 2. Not listening to his partner and neglecting their needs or wants. If you speak with a guy and feel like you're talking to a brick wall, run. If he always thinks he knows what's better for you, run even faster. A good relationship requires respect, so you should at least listen to your partner and accept they have a different point of view. Disagreeing is okay, but you should respect the right to think differently. I was once approached by a guy who acted like he knew me better than I knew myself. Never listened to a word I said. He always jumped to assumptions and tried to force his beliefs on me. He had a full picture of my future in his head and wanted me to follow his plan. Wouldn't even start dating. He was already being cruel as heck. He made fun of my religion, tried to alienate my friends, stalk me, and spread rumors. I had to confront him in a rather rough way, almost fighting my way out of his house. I wish I never spoke to him. Story 3. Red flags include a person who pressures you or pushes you to have intimacy, always runs the show, and leaves you hanging or has no regard for your feelings. It's amazing that anyone could get wrapped up with someone exhibiting those behaviors, but people are often drawn in by other incentives, like the promise of adventure, a certain lifestyle, or simply a relationship. The person who falls for it can be willfully or naively blind to the faults in pursuit of the perceived positives, even if the faults contradict the positives. But in my experience, the men who have had the above character traits, selfish and pushy, always turned out to be horrible partners. Their relationship either didn't go anywhere or was a train wreck. Story 4. Switching up their behavior when they don't get what they want. My ex was usually a very affectionate, warm, and outgoing guy, but one night I declined to have intimacy with him. He immediately acted like he was a blank void. No personality at all, just coldness. The contrast to how he usually behaved was scary. He'd stonewall until I confronted him in tears, then he'd make it all better, and I would find myself apologizing to him. Then he'd get what he wanted and would go back to his bubbly, cheerful self. Once I realized this was a pattern that he'd stonewall in time I declined, I was out. The dude was trying to train me not to refuse him. Story 5. He allows his relatives to lie to him about you or say negative things to or about you and doesn't stand up for you. He also allows his relatives to ignore your boundaries and feelings. For example, there's the story of the guy whose mother wanted to try on his fiance's wedding dress and kept pushing despite being told no multiple times. The fiancé came home early one day to find her future husband in the apartment, blocking her access to the bedroom. She heard a noise in the bedroom and ran past her fiancé, only to find his mother trying to force the wedding dress onto her body. The dress had special craftsmanship that ripped when the mother tried to yank it over her head. The fiancé screamed at her future mother-in-law and kicked her out, and her future husband was mad at her for upsetting his mom. I'm sure you'll remember the story, in which the mother-in-law refused to pay for the dress to be replaced, and her spineless mama's boy begged her to let him pay for it so his mom would stop crying. Story 6. Being in contact with his exes. Hanging out with him alone and not telling you about it. Telling you that you either trust someone or you don't after he's already broken your trust by being an untrustworthy liar who admits information. Not being able to admit he's wrong. Insisting he can't understand your viewpoint and that he's never met anyone with your viewpoint in order to try to get away with things. He still won't admit he did anything wrong and claims it's just a difference of opinion, making you think your interpretation or view of things is unheard of. Story 7. Their attitude around the topic of intimacy. If they act like it's something they are owed, that they deserve, or that they are entitled to in any way, no thanks. Next. But if they're respectful, not pushy, and considerate of how you're feeling, of course it'll happen a lot faster and be better overall. This is literally the bare minimum. Sometimes if I'm not feeling it and they immediately stop and tell me, that's okay, and want to cuddle instead, sometimes that turns me on and suddenly I'm in the mood. It's terribly sad that the bar is so low that the basic respect is considered hot now, but here we are. But yes, before it is said, intimacy is and can be very important in a relationship, but it is never something you're entitled to. That's all I'm getting at. Story 8. I'm realizing now that my wife always guilted me out of hanging out with friends. She would say it was weird that I wanted to catch up with an old good friend or coworker. I'm literally realizing that it was some sort of gaslighting because why would it be weird to hang out with someone who stayed the night almost every weekend and who we eventually ended up as roommates with, along with another good friend? Basically, we were best friends for years, but I guess maybe it's weird now that it's later in life and we're married. Sorry, just had to work that through. Story 9. Not one red flag, but multiple. Controlling behavior. Comes on too strong, emotionally or aggressively. He's essentially overselling himself like a used car salesman. Love bombing. Telling you what you think you want to hear. That only works short term and is not sustainable long term. A self-hating or loathing mindset. If he can't love himself for who he is, how can he love others? Reeking of insecurity. For example, smelling of cologne to the point where you can actually taste it. Materialistic behavior. Acting too prideful or boasting. Talking trash about previous relationships or dates. Story 10. I'm adding this because I just thought of another one. My ex used to annoy me and then call me dramatic when I finally got mad, yelled, or showed frustration. He thought it was funny as heck to make me angry. Then he'd get mad with me when I was in a bad mood, a mood he had caused by annoying the crap out of me. For example, I'd be trying to get something, a remote, a lighter, whatever it was, and he would grab it first and then play keep away until I was so mad I would just start screaming at him. Then he would get an attitude, hand it to me and say, "You're so dramatic," or "Quit being such a drama queen." Here. Story 11. Obviously, pushiness and refusing to take no for an answer, including on non-intimate topics. Insecurity is the biggest one. In my experience, insecure men are very manipulative and intentionally damaging to their partner's self-esteem since their own is so low. Another one is men who love to teach their partners things but give off weird vibes when you know more than them or don't need teaching on a subject. These are the ones who think their opinions are more valuable than their partners. Story 12. He can't handle even minor disagreements and gets defensive if you try to tell him when his behavior is a problem. These are usually solid signs that someone has narcissistic tendencies. My ex-husband couldn't even handle disagreeing about which Democratic candidates we liked in the primaries, not which party we voted for, but which candidate from the same party we liked. Now I get judged because my current boyfriend is more conservative, but he isn't a schmuck about politics and generally treats me with respect, which I realize is a lot more important than what you agree on. Story 13. When he takes you to a chain restaurant across the street from another chain, leaves every 10 minutes for exactly 10 minutes, and then rolls up all disheveled for the entire meal. You're thinking, okay, he's got IBS, no big deal. But then you see him eating cheddar biscuits while you're at the Applebee's, and you specifically told him you wanted to go to Red Lobster for the biscuits, but he said they had plasmodium in them, which you're pretty sure isn't a thing, but he seems so sure and it gives you cancer. And then he runs away again, and you see him in the window of the Red Lobster with your best friend's sister-in-law. Story 14. As a guy, I've noticed a lot of red flags. Poor communication. This applies to both genders, as many red flags do, but it is the single most important thing in a relationship. When you marry someone, they should feel like your best friend. You should both feel like you can confide anything in them. More than that, you should talk regularly and be open about your feelings. Not communicating creates toxicity and resentment over any issues. Even worse is communicating with someone who simply doesn't care. Being controlling and/or disrespectful, you're not an object, you're a person. Don't settle for someone who treats you like the former and who doesn't see you as the latter. Gaslighting you and making you feel like you're going crazy or that your emotions and feelings are invalid, it is manipulative and a form of emotional cruelty. A lack of empathy. Treating others the way you want to be treated is the golden rule for a reason. Empathy is about meeting another person's emotional needs and being able to support them. It helps us make our partners feel heard and understood. It also enables us to be kind to others even when they are not to us because we understand that we may be dealing with struggles we cannot see and many really need that kindness. How they talk about their exes. If they have nothing but negative things to say, it shows that they take no responsibility for the downfall of that relationship. They lack the ability to reflect on what the good and bad parts were. Every failed relationship has something to teach us about ourselves, and by not reflecting and learning, we are robbing ourselves of further personal growth. Story 15. From my experience, these are the worst red flags, and I can't say one is worse than the others. Most of this, I'll admit, came from a single relationship with a woman, saying things like, "I like him younger and I'm always the one in charge," claiming to want to fix or heal you, telling you that you're wrong for feeling ignored, telling you that your medical issues are you being manipulative, telling you that you're a manipulative narcissist for having CPTSD, telling you that you apparently just want to break up because you want them to put in some effort too, telling you that it's your fault, everything went wrong, leeching your physical and mental health away, telling you your fixations is your fault, telling you that you're a bad person for being defensive in certain situations because of your past, spiking you, forcing you into intimate situations, calling you the problem in every situation, telling you that you have to follow their religious rules because they don't like you not eating like they do. Story 16. The biggest red flag. Disrespecting others in any way. This includes calling people names, making cruel jokes, gossiping about them behind their backs, laughing at them, crossing boundaries and not respecting their values. Just run away from these people as soon as you see them disrespecting others. Other red flags are lying, especially if they're too comfortable with it, substance fixation, entitlement or always wanting to be the center of attention, jealousy and envy and acting on it by giving bad advice, doing something bad to someone or trying to pull them down, when all their previous relationships failed and it was never their mistake. A lack of empathy, no guilt after doing something bad to someone, cheating and misconduct, even if they try to justify it by making other people cheat, gambling. Also trust your intuition. When you meet someone, your first instinct about that person is usually right. Story 17. As a former gym rat, I'd probably say being really into the gym and muscle building is a red flag. I don't think I was a very good partner when I was bodybuilding. I was also pretty shallow. A lot of guys I knew in the community were far worse. For example, one guy went on a long rant because he saw a skinny guy with a beautiful woman. It's not a red flag to be into fitness, but I'd probably avoid the guy who's way too into aesthetics and bodybuilding. Story 18. If he doesn't let you finish speaking before he starts. As a man myself, we do this when we perceive the other person to be less important or inadequate. When a man respects you, he'll not just allow you to finish speaking. He will listen and respond. Ladies, if you're single and you can't finish a sentence before he responds, it means he's trying to do what we call in the business, hit it and quit it. It's a technical procedure, but it happens all the time. Story 19. About 5 years ago, I was in a police station waiting at a window for some paperwork to be returned. I was getting documentation for moving abroad. The man at the window next to mine, pretty much the only other person in the lobby, kept smiling at me in a half whisper. He said this or that, asked me about going on different kinds of dates with him, and then gave his own answers. I mostly ignored him as politely as I could. Eventually, I shook my head a few times, and he seemed to like my real answer on some level. He grinned and said, "No, I guess I'll have to take you then." I didn't look at him after that. A red flag is a red flag, but this guy just laid it all out there. Story 20. Not respecting our boundaries. If I say no, I'm not saying try harder. I want you to listen to what I'm actually saying and respect my wishes, and this applies to any boundary. Don't insist on picking me up if I want to drive myself to our date. Don't push for a private location if I'm not comfortable with that. Don't act like you're entitled to my Snapchat, phone number, or other contact information if I'm only ready to keep the conversation inside the dating app. You can ask for whatever you want, but understand that no means no, and that's the end of the discussion. A PSA for readers of all genders: if someone doesn't respect your boundaries early on about small and seemingly trivial things, they are not going to respect them later when it comes to the big, important things. Story 21. I've been unfortunate enough to attract the interest of a few really clingy, needy, jealous guys. You know the type. The ones that don't understand boundaries or respect your privacy and get upset if you're paying attention to anything or anyone other than them. The ones that don't understand the concepts of no and screw off. Such a complete turnoff and a major red flag. I always try to be nice to everyone, and when I turn down a guy, I try to do it in a way that's firm but not witchy. With these guys, none of that works. You have to become the biggest schmuck and sometimes threaten them or get the cops involved to get them to back off. Story 22. The one that may not seem obvious at first, but it's likely more common nowadays. If a guy is really eager for you to play a part in his life, look out. It can start out small, like he's almost feeding you lines or suggesting wardrobe or character development. I imagine that in the hellscape of influencer and content creation culture, these kinds of behaviors won't register as red flags at first, but that's some textbook NPD behavior. Don't conflate it with an actual relationship. You'll always be a character in his life, even when the camera's off. Story 23. Saying he's a damaged person who just needs love. In my experience, it's a manipulative tactic. I was too young and inexperienced at the time to realize he was just trying to make me feel bad for him and guilt me into staying. Also picking random things to bicker over. The most petty example was when I'd say I didn't like certain music and then suddenly he'd really want to listen to that music and I was being unreasonable for not letting him play it in the car while I was driving. Story 24. Take it from someone who is currently in an emotionally cruel relationship. These are the dynamics that make you feel like a worthless piece of crap. Invalidating your opinions. Inability to handle dissent. Your difference of opinion really angers them. Sweeping everything under the carpet and acting like nothing happened 10 minutes later. The silent treatment. Criticism of your personal taste, clothing, hobbies, etc. Mocking you or using sarcasm and teasing to belittle you. For example, he'll mock her daughter's laughter, but if someone tried to poke fun at him, he would get angry. Passive aggressiveness, such as deep sighs, walking right up next to you and eye rolls. Anger issues. They can't hold it in, or the anger continually bubbles under the surface. Oppositional to everything you say. Refuses to apologize and take personal responsibility. Is never wrong. Shaming and blaming for every little thing. I'll get blamed indirectly for things too. For example, he'll say, "Someone hasn't fed the cat, have they?" With a passive-aggressive tone and a smug look. Instead of acting like a normal human, he won't just ask me or quietly do it himself. Acting like they're superior to you in some way. Intelligence, looks, opportunities, etc. Guilt-tripping. Walking on eggshells around him. I get knots in my stomach when I hear him pull up in the driveway. Not actually listening and cutting you off mid-sentence to one-up the conversation and bring it back to themselves. It's highly insensitive. Generally lacking empathy. Being indifferent or insensitive to your feelings. For example, I was sick a few months back and within hours of being tested, I asked him to make me a cup of tea so I could rest in bed. He yelled at me to hurry up and get over it. I don't mean to make this about me, but I think sometimes sharing examples from real life can help others understand how insidious this actually is. I wouldn't wish for anyone to go through this. I could go on, but I think you get my point. Story 25. Full-grown adults who still reference people as if they're in the 80s high school cliques and get angry at minor inconveniences. I went on a dinner date with a guy who, at 33, kept going on and on about how he hates jocks and that the women who are into them are shallow and dumb. Tried to excuse myself to the bathroom so I could formulate an escape plan, but he said he had to go as well. After we got the code to the restrooms, I was able to get in successfully, but I guess I must have been entering it wrong so the door wouldn't open. He ended up screaming at the bathroom door and kicking it because he couldn't get in. Once he was able to get in, I left the restroom and freaking ran home. I was so grateful that I hadn't picked me up in a public place instead of my actual home. Story 26. Being very judgmental means they have an inferiority complex that presents itself as a superiority complex. Also means they'll be condescending and won't respect your free will and autonomy. Judgmental people typically are full of self-loathing. They just aren't self-aware enough to realize it's themselves they hate, not everyone else. Secondly, telling clever stories about his exes designed to make you think he's a nice guy or a victim of some witch. These stories are disguised as opening up about past trauma, and they will try to say, nice girl, but if all his exes are witches, is a hard pass. If you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos like this. Story 27. Where to start? He's brutal towards women, mostly female relatives or friends when they don't agree with him. He's lenient with his male close friends. For example, my ex despised his mother, a real deep hatred because she was conservative. While I was sympathetic at first, I then met his male friends for the first time. They were a quartet of fascists, and he'd laugh and joke along with them and then tell me how nice they were. This was definitely a subtle yet dangerous red flag. He doesn't let you enjoy harmless things, hobbies, passions, movies, etc. If he doesn't like them, he has to convince you to drop them. He gets bonus points if he acts passive-aggressive and you don't. An easy one. His first reaction to conflict is anger. Even if he doesn't punch walls or shout, acting angry when calmly confronted is a red flag. He gets you a gift or insists on paying for a meal and then gets mad when you don't do exactly what he wants, as if to pay him back, even though it was his unprompted decision in the first place. In general, he has to control who you are. He's never okay with how you dress, what you eat, the way you deal with things, or the way you say and explain something. Even if he passes it off as a joke, it's still a manipulative tactic to make you feel inadequate. He refuses to acknowledge that he's in a position of privilege in certain societal situations. He doesn't have to bow down and do everything you say, but I reckon the least a man could do is sit down and actually listen when a woman is trying to talk about her gender-based hardships. I probably have more that makes it to the worst list, but these are the ones I have right now. Story 28. He feigns interest in your conversation, doing all the normal things to show he's actively listening, but his smile doesn't reach his eyes. His interactions with friends are all similar and very surface. Even though he's putting on a jovial face, you can tell he's just playing a social interaction game. He may be well-liked, even handsome, but once he's convinced you that he's safe, the psychopath unfurls its wings. Story 29. A man I once dated put me down on several occasions. For reading nonfiction, self-help books, and not fiction like him. For eating white rice and not brown rice like him. For watching and enjoying certain shows on Netflix that he found very okay-ish. For using a saucepan to make rice instead of a pressure cooker. For using phrases such as nature's call and pain in the wrong place. He said, hey, such formal language, much wow. It actually badmouthed me to his cousin and then had the guts to tell me what he did. For having creative pursuits instead of pursuing all the physical activities he liked, such as biking, hiking, swimming, sports, and whatnot. And the list goes on. All these subtle put-downs are quite insignificant and could be easily overlooked and forgiven if you look at them individually, but what surprised me was how consistent he was with them and how condescending he was while actually putting me down. It was slow and subtle with nothing obvious about it at first sight. There are red flags that you can easily spot in the first couple of dates, and then there are others that take time to surface. You have to realize them before they eat away at your peace of mind. I think the latter ones are the most dangerous because of how subtle they are, which makes them easy to overlook. Story 30. There was this guy I was dating for a few years. I just broke up with him, and for years he had been saying, yeah, I'm the same age as you, and have the same birthday. I believed it, for some reason. We met on Roblox, so I really thought that was his age. I was on Discord with my friend talking about him, and apparently, he had cheated on me with a few girls. He told them all random ages. He told me his age was mine, and he told them all that their age was his, too. Basically asking their age and then saying, yeah, I'm the same age as you. I immediately broke up with him and blocked him from everything. So, basically, do a background check before you make it official, especially if it's someone you met online. Story 31. Gaslighting right off the bat. The number of crazy ex-girlfriends they have, more than 2 is suspicious, and it's more than likely the guy who's the problem. Mansplaining. As a female mechanic, this happens all the time, and half the time they're not even correct. Telling me what I should wear or what to do. Above all, treating waitstaff like crap or not tipping. Always respect humans and always tip everyone, no matter what. Racist, sexist, or any of the negativists, really. A personal one for me specifically, if he doesn't correct other people when they compliment him in my car. This happens often, and my current partner is mind blown by how often people compliment him in my car. He always corrects them, makes it a point, and loudly gets my attention when someone compliments him on it. He's also been my friend for about 8 years and already knows this drives me freaking insane. Story 32. A bit specific, but a big red flag. Not helping you when you're sick or making you feel like a bother when you're sick. My ex-husband would all but refuse to go out of his way when I was under the weather. Things like going to the store for medicine or heating up some soup were a huge pain for him, and he was very vocal about these inconveniences. Not to mention, he couldn't be bothered to clean up after himself and would simply leave any messes he made for me to deal with when I wasn't sick. Later in our relationship, I developed chronic health problems. He left me because he couldn't deal with me needing so much help and was still a young man. Let's just say I wasn't exactly surprised. Story 33. Core and fixation denial and cruel behaviors are major red flags. Broken down, the behaviors include the following: yelling or losing their temper over small things and or everything. Yelling at service workers, using fists to solve conflicts rather than using their words or walking away. Gaslighting their partner by twisting events and words to serve their own agendas. Being a pathological liar and then getting angry at their partner's disappointment in their lying. Belittling or screaming at their partner through demeaning humor, which they claim is meant to be a joke and we shouldn't be so sensitive about it. Essaying their partner to satisfy their own desires. Being emotionally indecisive, manipulative, or breadcrumbing to keep a potential partner around rather than being clear about where they stand romantically. Stating any negative slander, or disapproval of a partner's body to the point where they are forced to change to fit their standard. Being so controlling over the relationship and others' emotions to feel a sense of empowerment. Controlling where, when, and who the partner sees, eventually isolating them completely. They say things like, "You don't need them, I'm better for you anyway," or "We don't need them, as we're enough on our own." Constantly victimizing themselves in discussions, which quickly turn into full-blown arguments because they refuse to accept any accountability for their actions or words. Twistedly complimenting you for something, but the compliment is actually about them and has nothing to do with you. For example, "I love how much you love me." It's easy to do though, since I'm low-key. Mentioning race in a negative way when discussing people. My Filipino ex called me a freaking white witch multiple times when I said anything I didn't agree with or approve of. If you point out something they do that makes you uncomfortable, you have to suck it up because they claim it is normal to do and the only person who has a problem with it is you, so the issue must lie with you instead. Lastly, finding joy or humor in people and or animals getting hurt. All of these are red flags. As someone who just survived my most cruel relationship ever, I have one suggestion for everyone if they ever come across someone who has the above qualities. Run. Story 34. I'm old and I was at Disneyland with my wife and kids. We bumped into this younger couple several times and every time the guy was complaining. She was obviously into the guy and putting up with it. We got on a ride in close proximity to them and he flipped out about having to wait in line for 20 minutes. He spaced off and looked at his phone. I got close enough to speak without him hearing me. I said, "If this guy can't enjoy a moment with you without complaining, imagine what he'd be like here with a couple of little kids." I walked off and didn't make eye contact, but I know she heard me. I guess to some people, the Grand Canyon is just a hole in the ground too. If everything and everyone sucks, you might be the problem. Story 35. As a single parent in my early 20s, it's when any guy has this uncontrollable urge the first time or the first few times we talk to say things like, "You're a total hot mom." "Are you still a mom? You're really good looking and thin. Do you still have milk coming out? If you do, can I try it? Maybe we can babysit together. I'm raising my child, not being a babysitter, dude. Do you want to have another baby in you? Because I'm so down. Just get a babysitter and come hang out with me." These are just a few examples of the worst red flags I've experienced. This is why I've given up on dating or talking to anyone. It's a mix of constant insulting, gross, uncomfortable, and unnecessary comments like these for no reason. Some guys will even try to act like they want to be a stepdad so badly just because they think it will win me over, so I'll fool around with them. I'm not that dumb. I've also never asked or wanted anyone to be a step-parent to my child. Basically, they all either hit me up to try to sleep with me or to make some messed up comment for whatever reason. I'm not dumb. I know what they're doing, especially when all the red flags are so clear as day. Finding someone to love is not worth it anymore. I honestly don't think there's a person out there for me. Story 36. My friend dated a guy who had a restraining order against him from an ex. His ex even reached out to my friend to warn her that he had mistreated her for years. My friend's boyfriend somehow convinced my friend that the ex-girlfriend was the crazy one, just jealous and trying to ruin his life by making up stories about him. A surprise to no one, when my friend and this guy broke up, he also mistreated her and made her life hell. I really tried to warn her to believe the ex-girlfriend and that this guy was a walking red flag, but she was in love. Story 37. Reading these comments has made me realize why dating culture is totally crap right now. People don't understand what a red flag actually is. They aren't empathetic toward their partner's reactive behaviors, and they aren't willing to communicate slowly and methodically when a simple conflict arises. This world is lacking more and more in empathy, and it's so sad to watch. For me, the worst red flags would be if a guy threatens to hit me, threatens to cheat, or jokes about ignoring or dismissing important boundaries. Each of these things is an immediate threat of oncoming danger, which is what a red flag is. A huge yikes and 100% worth questioning getting out of the relationship. They are also a sign that we need couples therapy ASAP, and specifically, that he needs therapy ASAP for me to stay. Story 38. When he tells you that all of his exes are crazy and he hopes you'll be different, maybe he did have a string of bad luck with women, but the far more likely explanation is that he's a schmuck. He interprets a reasonable reaction to his crappy behavior as crazy to avoid any personal accountability. He's probably also saying this because he knows one of them will eventually reach out to you and warn you, or so you won't get outwardly upset with him when he inevitably does something crappy. Really, anytime he spends a good bit of energy in your initial interactions, whether that's at a bar, a party, on a dating app, or on the first date, complaining about women he's dated or women who've rejected him and making himself out to be a poor, put-upon victim, run. Dating him will at best be exhausting. Story 39. If he takes issue with my having male friends, that's a problem. I've worked in male-dominated industries for the past 12 years. The dudes who have an issue with my having male friends either get over themselves or become insanely jealous and possessive. I'm not willing to roll those dice anymore. Men who are relieved that I'm not like all the other girls or their ex or whoever they're comparing me to. I can appreciate a man who appreciates my self-sufficiency and my lax nature, but I'm not interested in being not like other girls. Most women I know are a lot like me. Sane, decent, driven, forward-thinking, etc. Men who talk crap about women as a whole are a huge red flag. Dudes like that will try to demolish you if you break their mold of what makes an ideal woman. Story 40. My ex once told me that he was a schmuck. I laughed it off, but he was telling the truth. He was very arrogant with a short temper. Our conversations were incredibly boring because he genuinely thought I wasn't as smart as him, so he put zero effort into them. He would blame me and get mad over really tiny things. He refused to talk out problems in a calm manner. He'd yell and didn't care if he made me cry. He constantly made insulting jokes to his friends and family who all thought he was hilarious. I, however, just saw him as being a schmuck. Long story short, he's not worth my time. Story 41. I wouldn't say these are red flags, only for guys, as I've seen many women do this too. I'm a great, insert thing here, or I believe in soulmates, or two statements that always sketch me out. Normally, if someone says they're good at something, they're lying or overconfident. Whether it's intimate time, their job, or gaming habits, whatever, the idea of soulmates is often used by women to excuse bad behavior because we're meant to be together. Men will often feed into that or tell them the exact opposite to keep them hooked. There's also being too eager to pay the bill. Ladies, just pay for your own food. Believe me, it's safer. As a bonus, if this is the kind of guy you want to keep, it'll leave a good impression on him. Oh, and body count. There's a rule among men. Don't stick your Johnson in crazy. Well, that extends to women too. The more he's racked up, the more likely you're going to have to deal with his crazy ex. Don't Scott Pilgrim yourself. Story 42. This goes for both genders. Using any past experience as an excuse during the first few weeks of knowing each other. Being transparent about personal problems as a precaution is fine, like not getting to a bar because of claustrophobia. However, using past trauma or mental illness as an explanation for crappy behavior is lame. Even if your crappy behavior is completely explainable by something out of your control, nobody needs to be forced to care about your personal issues. Just apologize, be accountable, and move on. Nobody cares that you burst into tears randomly and threaten people because your dad used to hurt you. We all have problems. Story 43. When he has a big tattoo across his chest, usually saying something like loyalty or some BS like that, and in my instance, when he has a problem that the father of my children is actually an involved dad who takes care of his kids and we're on good terms. A lot of guys my age, early 20s, I had kids very young, have a problem that I talk to and see my kid's father on a daily basis and he's always there for events and we take them places together, etc. Like, they don't want him around me or my kids. Like, he's their dad. Wouldn't it be worse if he was a lost cause? Story 44. Accosting. Blocking your pathway, grabbing or following you and trying to flirt or get your number. It should be obvious, but all of the above have happened to me while walking in the middle of the day, and the first time it happened was in school. Should be obvious, but no, do not pester, stalk, or harm people when trying to flirt with them. Also, spam messaging someone without having asked for their contact is a huge red flag. It's happened to me through a university contact list and a pizza delivery contact list. If you don't identify yourself first and ask if it's okay to proceed, don't spam someone with flirty messages or poetry. There are many other red flags, but given this happened to me without more escalation, I guess some men might seem old rom-com tropes and think they're romantic. Nope, these are the biggest red flags and they're scary as heck. Story 45. Mom's boys. Not just having basic love and respect for your mother or motherly figure, but I mean a full-on, nearly Oedipus-like commitment to their mother. I dated a guy when I was a senior in high school and he had already graduated. He kept me up until 4 a.m. on a school night with midterms the next day, driving my car and nearly emptied my gas tank, all to find a laptop charger for his mother. I was begging him to go home or for us to at least call the places before driving, but he insisted his mother needed this and it was important. After that, his mother didn't even let me sleep there. I then had to drive home and got maybe an hour of sleep. Story 46. Life phases. I'm struggling right now because if my boyfriend isn't physically around me, he won't call, text, or engage in any actual conversation with me. I have to call him, and most of our conversations are either awkward silence, him doing something else, or complaining about his own mistakes, or him just saying he needs to go to bed soon. Has no car or license. I know, I should have been warned right there. And expects me to go out of my way to get him when we live around 25 minutes away from each other. I work full-time, 6 days a week. He works 3 or 4 days part-time and complains about working so hard even though he has no bills. He has no real concept of responsibility yet. While he can be sweet when I'm with him, it's just not feeling like enough anymore. Story 47. He's suddenly everywhere you go, including places you don't expect him to be. I had a guy, a friend of mine, randomly show up at places I was at. Outside my college classes, at my work, at events I attended, and every friend hangout. The one day he was in my dormitory stairwell. He didn't live on campus, yet he was just hanging out because it seemed like a cool place. One day my friend pulled me aside during our walk to class and asked if I was okay, worried that the guy didn't have good intentions. That guy came out of nowhere, screaming at us for trying to ruin his reputation, saying he'd never hurt a lady and that we were judgmental B-words. Once we realized this was serious, my friend ran to her other friend group to ask for help. I don't know what they said or did, but I got the guy to finally leave me alone. The dude was expelled and banned from campus not long after for an entirely different reason. Story 48. Not wanting to tell people, especially friends who are open with you, that you're in a relationship or avoiding setting your status on Facebook, even if you've been together long enough to be serious and have the ability to log in. Also, suddenly turning off your relationship status is a red flag. This might sound trivial, but even if you're a technophobe, it takes 2 seconds to accept a relationship request. It's a common technique to keep yourself available in the market and able to talk to people without being that person who is constantly questioned about why they're flirting while in a relationship. I don't use Facebook often, but since learning this, if I'm in a relationship, I always set my status to prove I'm not up to something sketchy. This isn't to say that everyone who doesn't use social media is going to cheat, but if they do use it and there's something stopping them from setting that status when you're serious, it's kind of off. No, it's very, very off. Story 49. When a guy doesn't want to be seen with you or controls what you look like and what you wear in public. This is especially prevalent in high school because some guys care more about their reputation than their SO, but it still happens fairly often with adults. Another red flag is when a guy will make slightly negative comments on everything you do, like what you eat, how you present yourself, or your mannerisms. Also, guys who are dry texters are always a red flag. Story 50. Go on a date with someone and try saying no to a totally innocuous thing. Try it a few times. Don't let them get the door, choose your drink, or something small. Pay attention to how they respond. If they continuously try to talk over you, change your mind, and do anything but respect a simple no, don't get involved. Don't do anything physical with them. Controlling cruel people I control and will show this in small ways in the beginning. By the time their true colors are shown, you're usually already involved or in a potentially dangerous situation. If they can't take no for an answer with little things, they probably won't regard it too much if things get physical. Coercion is a big red flag for me. Story 51. A few years back, my dad and I were shopping. At the time, I had just turned 16 and we were looking for some summer clothes because it was getting hot. I was wearing a dress and was looking for a button-up shirt to match a skirt, I think. As we were looking, I found the shirt that was odd, to say the least. I said something about it, joking that I would buy it. Then he said, maybe if you dress more ladylike. I have remembered this line for years because he would also yell at my mom, who would wear just shorts and a t-shirt around the house and to Walmart, about her not appropriate attire. Sorry about this rant, but I thought you guys would enjoy how he's the definition of a red flag. Women. What makes a man instantly unattractive to you? How they treat women they find unattractive. As someone who lost 30 pounds and saw a complete 180 in the way a guy treated me, I can honestly say I didn't care when they weren't nice to me. I didn't care that they didn't hold doors open or offer to carry stuff or give me random free crap. The worst, the absolute freaking worst part of being chubby, was how I couldn't have a remotely normal interaction with a guy without him thinking I was into him. It was so freaking frustrating. Like I was never even attracted to any of these guys. I'm pretty picky myself. We'd just be working on a project together or laughing over a shared Frasier obsession, and all of a sudden I could literally see the moment when it occurred to them that I might get the wrong idea. They would suddenly either withdraw or act cold, or they would start spouting off about their girlfriend. It was as humiliating as it was frustrating. Since losing the weight, I've actually had a couple of these guys confirm that they didn't want to lead me on, so they took care not to be too friendly. I just remember wanting to scream, "Dude, I'm not even into you," every gosh darn time it happened. Story 2. Horrible conversation and no interests or hobbies. I had a guy who would ask me literally every day if my day was productive, and if I asked what made his day productive, he never answered. It's like he only had one question to ask, and that was it. No talking about hobbies, children, the community. He didn't know how to ask diverse questions, and he certainly didn't know how to answer them. It lasted about 3 days. More men need to learn how to be likable. Story 3. Poor hygiene. Bad teeth, bad breath, soiled clothing, and pants that look like they haven't been washed in ages. Hair sticking out of ears and noses, dirty fingernails, an unkempt beard, and greasy hair with dandruff. The sight of garments with dirty rims. Ugh, you're not climbing on top of me. And please, for the love of God, learn how to wipe your butts. Only a baby should be spotting a skid mark in their garments. Unless you're coming home hot, sweaty, and a little musty from a hard day at work. Otherwise, I don't mind a little man sweat, which I call clean musk. That's sexy. That's pheromones. If I like you, I'll probably like your natural smell. Otherwise, take a shower, brush your teeth, change your drawers, wear a nice cologne, and I'll be on you like white on rice. Story 4. Inattentiveness is a major turnoff. One of the most universally attractive things in a man is attentiveness. For example, he's in a shared space with men and women and notices, without it being pointed to him, that dishes are being cleared or the space is being picked up or cleaned. He then quietly steps in and does his part with no prompting or fanfare. Bonus points if he makes the other men participate or calls them out for not helping. So what's instantly unattractive? A man who ignores the labor going on around him but benefits from it. Mansplaining or talking over me or interrupting me. I know Reddit hates the term, but mansplaining is real. Men who step in and try to explain life or life experiences to grown women who know about those situations as well or better than they ever will. They approach it like they're delivering breaking news. Men who say things like, "Be careful, they'll pester you there." In other news, water is wet. Pestering is everywhere. I don't have to be warned. I'm already aware and prepared. Before this conversation, I was pestered 2 different times, or something like that. Spend less time telling women the world is dangerous and spend more time trying to end the danger, starting with yourselves. Then when I'm speaking, let me finish. Don't talk over me like you don't even hear me. Instantly can't stand men who do this. Story 5. I'm not casting stones here, but it's interesting that many of the answers here have an overlapping Venn diagram with guys women date, at least until some of these traits are revealed. I've been married almost 30 years, so I have no skin in the game, but it's really interesting how women are like, I want a nice, kind, and smart man who takes care of himself, and then they're riding off in a motorcycle with an exciting bad boy and are surprised when he's a schmuck. Seems like the real sweet spot is in the middle of what people say they want and what they actually want. Story 6. Aside from the usual hygiene issues, unfaithfulness, bad manners, sexism, etc., one big turnoff for me is a man who does not seem to care about others. Like, if I'm trying to get to know you and ask questions, listen to your stories and try to engage in your hobbies to make you feel seen, and you don't do the same, okay. Off. And the worst part, this happens so often. I'll go on a date, ask him about himself, and he gets so engrossed in talking about himself that he doesn't give me room for input and doesn't even ask anything about me. Hello? What am I here for? Is this just a means for you to have an ego boost or something? Lol. Story 7. Funny enough, I have a friend who, when he was young, had almost all the unattractive qualities of all the comments in this thread, except the macho, alpha, and arrogant attitude. He was intoxicated on substances all the time, blacking out regularly. He smelled, his room was disgusting, and he had highs of amazing positive energy and lows of terrible bad tempers. It made his conquests jealous, was always in debt, and took no accountability for, let's be frank, all the drama he created. You couldn't rely on him for anything serious. He would triple book events and people or just forget about you. Well, guess what? He also used to be the ultimate intimacy machine in our friend group and slept with half the city. We all loved him, the girls and the boys, and he switched when he felt like it. Going out to party with him was like going to Disneyland. It was unreal, really. I was once at a coffee shop with him and he received a text from a couple he just met asking to join a triad. He just went casually, like going for tea. Once I was calling him and something was off. I realized he was getting his thing whistled, but no matter. He still picked up the phone because why not? Nothing special was going on. Another time you met this girl, proposed after 3 months, got engaged, and then a few weeks later had to sneak out of the house with all his stuff while she was on a lunch break because they broke up. Remembering seeing it live feels like a dream you can't totally recall because it seems like it doesn't make sense. He's now married with a second kid and basically never leaves the house. His dad bod and lost all his front teeth. He's completely submissive to his wife, who basically excluded most of his old friends. It's like it was written by the Coen brothers. I don't know what you can conclude about this, but every time I read such a thread, I'm like, yeah, BS. I knew a guy who was way worse than that, and you would have totally slept in his dirty, smelly cave he called a bedroom after swearing you would never ever do it. Story 8. When they try to cross the friend zone on their own after I've stated I was only interested in being friends, if you cannot simply be my friend and follow the boundaries of basic friendship, you cannot eventually grow to be my partner. I find that men don't see much value in women as friends, and the reality is, if you don't see value in a friendship with me, you won't see value in a relationship with me. Any future potential relationship is instantly destroyed when they do that. Story 9. America is in a civil war. This is not safe here. The BBB gives ICE $140 billion. For context, the U.S. Marine Corps has a budget of $50 million. What do you think they're going to buy with all that money? Bullets, bombs, drones, tanks, concentration camps, and jackbooted thugs. They will not stop at immigrants. They want a one-party police state led by their anointed messiah. Trump is at war with the American people and no one is coming to save you. ICE will come into your city and take and end with a blessing of the MAGA regime. You need to prepare yourself, learn self-defense, train your body, and buy food. You're in a civil war, whether you like it or not. Story 10. When he only talks to attractive girls and completely ignores girls he's not attracted to. To the men replying to this comment, just know I'm rolling my eyes with every comment y'all make and literally have zero incentive to respond. This is a turnoff for me because that guy only sees girls as an object and isn't capable of seeing her past like that. Like a potential friend? Nah, they only want to date women and not be friends with them. Story 11. If a man has any kind of weirdness around dogs, I don't know how to explain exactly what I mean by this because it's a feeling, but he's bad with dogs. The guy is gone to me as a romantic interest instantaneously. The switch flips. Boom. Done. I cannot even remember the most remote flicker of attraction. Some immediate implosions of attraction include he has super obedient dogs and shows them off. He teaches his dogs stupid tricks. He doesn't like dogs. What the actual? Dogs ignore him completely. He's fussy about the dogs or the mess they make. He complains about dogs being dogs. He can't tell when dogs are playing versus fighting. He has a weird energy around dogs. Dogs don't gravitate to him and he seems offended by it. He doesn't care about the dog's comfort. Forgets to give a dog water. Freaking goodbye. God forbid he's a schmuck to a dog. He gives up on a dog. He tries to dominate a freaking dog like Caesar Milan. He can't just accept the dog the way the dog is. He talks too much about the dog's appearance, breed, or purity. Stuff like that. Dog weirdness. Story 12. When their kindness leaves the second they realize you're not going to sleep with them. Referring to women as witches, females, or with other misogynistic language. Supporting any vocal public misogynists, e.g. Tate. Being a devil's advocate because they're only ever trying to advocate for right-wing ideology, in my experience. Being weird about women's bodies, body hair, periods, anything like that. Being sexist, transphobic, homophobic, or racist. Trying to creepily encourage me to drink more. Not asking any questions. Story 13. Defending blatantly insulting language, using an excuse like, I'm just being honest, instead of pausing for a second to stop and think that maybe the tone and phrasing wasn't just rude, but something akin to bullying. Show me you care about me by criticizing me like an adult. Politely and straightforwardly. You can criticize someone or be honest with them in a polite manner without having to coddle them or sugarcoat things. There's a huge difference between coddling, polite honesty, and straight-up bullying. If you don't know the difference and defend your bad behavior instead of taking accountability, I'm sorry, but a 10 can become a 0 real quick for me. Story 14. A couple of things, actually. If they yell and cuss at their mother regularly, especially if they expect something from them, to me it shows how you treat women in general. Terrible hygiene. If you smell, don't wear deodorant, or have bad breath regularly, I do not want to date you. Extreme differences in views or political views. If it's a little different, that's understandable. We all have different opinions, but if someone is against women's rights, racist, homophobic, and just overall doesn't have an open mind, that also makes me think you're not attractive. Story 15. A lot of things. I'm not going to talk about hygiene because that's an obvious no, but there are many other things, like if he's mean and uneducated, e.g. he talks down to or disrespects others, like the waiters, that's an immediate no. There's no freaking thing to say. For example, if you have to do all the work in the conversation and if I get quiet, he does too. Also, if he has nothing positive to say and keeps venting about everything like a girl on her time of the month. If he doesn't make eye contact and creepily looks at my lips and everywhere else but my eyes. When he doesn't respect boundaries and doesn't read the room or take a hint. He talks badly about people, his friends or his exes. Story 16. Political or social beliefs. Being a Republican or moderate, being pro-life or having no emotional intelligence. Behavioral red flags. Being a felon, being in a cult, using enhancers or hard substances. Drinking too much, not respecting boundaries or not listening to me. Lifestyle or hobbies, having a fake tan, having a gambling fixation, being an obsessive gamer, being big into sci-fi or anime, being a hunter, being into crypto or being a guy or weapon nut. Social interactions, being super meek, being rude to waitstaff or constantly mansplaining. Physical or aesthetic, having long hair or a man bun, being married or wearing Axe cologne or products. Values and ambition, being religious, being in the military or having no ambition. Miscellaneous behaviors, being a bad driver, driving a Tesla, a Hummer, or a minivan, or being cruel to animals. That's just a start, really. I know I left off a bunch. Story 17. From history, controller throwing or keyboard smashing. And weaponized incompetence, but that's self-explanatory. I'm a gamer too. I 100% understand gamer rage. I can even understand yelling at the TV or monitor to an extent. Controllers are way too expensive to be eating across the living room, and I have had it where the target was me, not a wall. Both my ex and my former roommate, who is still one of my best friends, used to do it. I know for a damn fact that they regret it the second it leaves their hands, but they will literally go back, buy another $60 to $120 controller, and do it again a week, or hell, even a day later. Just put it down. Go for a walk. Go autopilot. Clean something. Freaking fold a load of laundry in a fit of rage. Chill the heck out. Story 18. Being chronically emotionally unregulated. That can manifest as any of the following. Passive-aggressiveness, defensiveness, or anger. Invalidating or gaslighting or taking zero accountability. People-pleasing or being a pushover.
not willing to exhibit leadership qualities due to fear of other people's opinions, not being kind, especially to pets, kids, the elderly, or people who are handicapped, wanting a mommy or a maid instead of an equal partner. For me personally, being too submissive or groveling, being insecure, it leads to overcompensating somehow, and that's never good. These were all my ex-husband's issues. My husband now is as solid as they come, thank God. The circulating phrase, I can be in my feminine because he's in his masculine, is so true for me. I did everything in my last relationship. Raise kids, grocery shop, disassemble, fix and reassemble the broken dryer, fix everything all the time. The only on-call parent, yep, all of it. He wanted a mom, not a wife. I felt like I was raising an extra child. The emotional roller coaster my ex was exhausting and pitiful, honestly. I'm not that way as a woman, and I don't like men who are. I felt like I was the dude in the relationship. Not for me. Story 19. I can't believe I have to make this a standard, but anything along the lines of racism, homophobia, etc., or hating on any marginalized group. This also includes jokes that aren't directly hate speech, but might be insensitive. I was talking to a guy who sent me a reel on Instagram talking about, this is how all black women look, and it was a photo painting them in a bad light. I immediately got grossed out by him. Not to mention I have friends and family who are black, gay, etc., all things made fun of or acted uncomfortable by. Just makes it funny to me. Unfortunately, those are the things you can get called sensitive for these days, but if that's what I am for showing compassion and love, then so be it. Story 20. Bad body odor is the biggest thing because it makes me think you aren't showering properly, which is gross. Personally, if your butt hangs out, that's the next massively unattractive thing. Wear a belt. It's a matter of dignity and self-awareness. Spitting on the sidewalk is gross. If you absolutely must do it, at least do it in a tissue and throw it away. I don't want to see it, and I sure as crap don't want to step in it. That's just another personal thing, though. There are a lot of things I find unattractive, but one thing I think is really nice, a good attitude, self-awareness, and some level of concern for the people around you, even if it's just a stranger. I can't tell you how many men and women are so glued to their phones in public that they can't or won't do something as simple as hold the door open for someone who has their hands full. It's actually downright pathetic. Story 21. Boasting about fighting or wanting to create conflict with people to prove a nobody's gonna mess with me vibe. Please grow up. You shouldn't be on guard and ready to fight people for no reason. Love with kindness and openness. Lol. Talking over me excessively. Not just because of an ADHD trait or something, because I have that and people can still have ADHD and learn how to balance a conversation with someone. Also, not asking my opinion on things or saying, you know when this happens, blah blah, and I say, I understand, but they continue to over-explain as if I were a brick wall and what I said didn't matter. Lol. Being an angry driver, getting angry when being asked how they feel and not being able to talk about their emotions in a healthy way. Instead, they get defensive or pretend nothing is wrong. Story 22. The minute they become much too content in the relationship, and I don't just mean getting used to the routine, I mean lazy. In the beginning, they're loving, endearing, and actually clearly attracted to you. Until months or years into the relationship, women have to take complete control. Day nights, gifts, cleaning up the house, folding laundry, bills, and even something as simple as quality time. They just let you do everything without input or discussion. It starts to feel more like we're taking care of a grown man-child that wants to suckle on another woman's thumb just because his mother used to do everything for him. Stay attentive. Don't get comfortable with having her do all the work. Put in your effort to keep the relationship working and alive. Without that, your lover has become a maid and a mother to you. Story 23. Going to his house and he has clearly never been taught how to clean in his life. I'm not talking about a pile of laundry, I'm talking about garbage and stuff everywhere, where it looks like a squatter's house, with no actual furniture, no bed frame or anything like that. The house or apartment smells like cat whiz or whatever else. They don't fix things that are broken, they don't clean up the kitchen, and they leave a mess. You choose to live that way. That's disgusting and absolutely intolerable. Or if their car is completely ransacked, stained and has garbage or kid stuff everywhere. Having respect and pride in your space is extremely important. It shows a lot about how they treat things and, ultimately, people around them. It speaks to the quality of the decisions they make in life. Story 24. Someone who admits he will never take accountability, make his own choices, and accept the consequences. He, a Mormon, admitted that he would only ever vote Republican because that's what his parents and bishop told him, and he'd only ever vote pro-life because that's what he was instructed to do. Despite being given ample evidence of why those policies are failing living people, he's unable or unwilling to accept that the people telling him what to do might be wrong. He was only ever a friend, but I stopped engaging with him after that. Story 25. His mom comes first. Sadly, this has not just happened to me one time. When you're an adult, you love and support your parents, but your partner needs to be a priority. If you're living at home and doing something with your mom every day or week without fail, and that is a priority, you don't make the same effort to create a consistent and special routine with the person you're dating, I'm out. I'm over mama's boys. Nothing about it is endearing to me anymore. I've had too many bad experiences. Story 26. Any kind of, I don't want to talk about my problems because it doesn't do anything type of talk. Right off the bat, I don't even want to be friends with you because you've already made it clear that I'm not going to be able to have a healthy relationship of any kind with you if that's how you think. Also, a very specific one, when they always have to relate something to themselves. I distinctly remember this one guy friend I had months ago who thought it would be a compliment to say, "I like that you're a devil's advocate. It's useful to have around." Like, what am I? Your freaking servant? Why is a trait of mine only good when it's useful to you? You couldn't have just said, "I like that you're not afraid to have differing opinions"? There are so many other ways you could have gone about that would have been an actual compliment. If you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos like this. Story 27. Acting like they know everything. I work in STEM, so when a man asks about my work and doesn't work in the same field, the fair assumption is that he knows almost nothing about it. But they will sit there and nod and say things like, "Oh yeah, I watched a video on that once. I know a decent amount about it." When in reality, they've never even heard of it. I've caught several men in the act, sometimes after they've attempted to argue with me about my own field. I am literally a software engineer transitioning into machine learning and have had men try to lecture me about AI when their furthest understanding of it is sci-fi. I've known lots of people in STEM fields I'm not in, and our conversations are nothing like that. We ask lots of questions about each other's work and send each other articles or videos if the interest is that deep. We just have a good time with it. But many heteronormative men don't understand that impressing a woman does not demand you be seen as smarter or wiser than her, but rather that you show genuine curiosity about her life. And that doesn't mean pretending you have that interest just to get another date. Story 28. Bragging a lot, or worse, humble bragging. You can't talk about anything emotional, or even worse, he sees any emotion as an entry to intimate talk. He thinks money, power, or status is his best selling point. He bullies people or tries to manipulate them to serve him. He believes that good looks are a virtue and bad looks are a character flaw. He talks highly of people who serve him and berates people who have rejected him or told him no. He thinks women and men have a place, rather than talking about a preference for attributes he finds appealing. There's more, but these are some red flags that disgust me enough to realize what kind of person I'm dealing with. Story 29. Arrogant men and insecure men. Men who feel like they're entitled to a woman's love and affection. Men who lack emotional resilience. Men who treat relationships as transactions. Men who expect the women in their lives to be their caretaker rather than their partner. Men who feel like they have no active role in child rearing or refer to taking care of their kids as babysitting. Conservative men. Any man who takes anything Joe Rogan has to say seriously. Doomer men who refuse to take responsibility for the flaws in their character and would rather give up and blame everyone else around them than change anything at all. Story 30. Lack of accountability. I had excellent chemistry with a guy. We found each other attractive and he seemed like a gentleman at the outset. When it came to our very first issue, I decided to play neutral and observe his behavior. What I got was denial from start to finish. There was an absolute refusal on his part to take any kind of initiative toward a solution. He was totally intent on disclaiming any responsibility for the situation he caused. When everything resolved and it was made clear that he had accidentally but directly caused harm to me, I got a throwaway sorry after 20 minutes of rambling about it being an accident. Then he made a cheerful assumption that I was going to let this go and continue seeing him, as though my forgiveness was a foregone conclusion. He was stunned when I declined a second date and immediately resorted to personal attacks when I pointed out his denial and lack of accountability. It was so disappointing, but physical attraction and chemistry isn't worth anything when they believe that they can do no wrong. Story 31. When they constantly talk about all the girls they've slept with or constantly talk about intimate things or situations, it's not amusing or making me think, "Oh, what a catch," or "he must be good in bed." It doesn't paint you in any kind of positive light. It makes me think, "Wow, you're a hoe," or probably someone I don't want to sleep with because of all the girls you've slept with. If you want a girl to like you, just be yourself and please, for the love of God, don't think that bragging about all the chicks you've laid is a turn on at all, because it's not. Not even a little tiny bit. It's actually gross and paints you as someone who can't or shouldn't be trusted when it comes to being intimate with someone. Story 32. Bad hygiene. Dressing like a child and just not taking care of yourself. It's not even about weight, height, or muscle mass. Personally, I think chubby dudes are adorable. I really do. It's whether or not you, number 1, wash your hair, number 2, groom yourself, and number 3, wear well-fitting, coordinated clothes. Mind you, you can be rail thin and be a slob or a totally jacked up dude who doesn't shower, but for the love of God, you'll go from a 3 to a 6 easily with a grooming routine. Oh, and honestly, if you're balding, just go bald. Also, don't know why so many of you are trying to style up that creepy mustache these days. A lot of men are really trying out the Lovely Bones mustache. Please, grow a beard or shave it off. Story 33. Bad hygiene is very high on the list. A close second, which is personal to me, is when a guy tells me he can't express himself because of fear. To elaborate, I've spoken to guys before who tell me they would dress more alternative, fishnets, heavy boots, nail polish, etc., but they're terrified of being judged. What they may not understand is that even though I'm a girl, I get a lot of judgment too. I've been barked at, had things thrown at me, and people get grabby, etc. I'm not interested in anyone who can't walk that road with me. I've done it before, and what it leads to is my partner trying to tone me down. I'm not doing that again. I've got one life, and I'm not letting strangers control it. Story 34. As an autistic woman, here are some of my deal breakers. Emotional unavailability or a lack of emotional intelligence, doesn't respect boundaries, bad hygiene, codependency, a bad temper, desperation, treats women he's not into badly or treats you badly if he's your partner, doesn't know his limits with alcohol, uses substances, even if it's as little as grass, talks about how much money he has early on, dislikes animals or harms them, overconfidence or acts condescending, tries to make you jealous, argues with women, including regularly posting about men's issues in a post of a woman complaining about misogyny just to speak over her, doesn't contribute to chores around the house, makes early intimacy jokes, uses creepy opening lines, not the actual funny, overly cheesy ones like, "Did it hurt when you fell from heaven?" Those will actually get a chuckle out of me instead. Supports political movements similar to MAGA. I'm European and staunchly leftist. Is arrogant, believes I owe him something after buying me dinner or a movie ticket. So yeah, the list kind of goes on. If you're wondering why my DMs are closed in the first place, this is usually what worms its way into them and pretends to actually act sane for some freaking reason. Story 35. Mama's boy. He was spoiled by his mom growing up, and so he has never lifted a finger for laundry, cooking, cleaning, buying groceries, or other basic adult life skills. His mom and him also have an enmeshed relationship where he's basically a surrogate husband to her. He prioritizes his mom over his future or actual wife. Anytime he and his wife have relationship issues, he goes to his mommy to complain about her, and mommy tries to sabotage his marriage by pulling them apart and being cruel to the wife. Story 36. He treats women he doesn't find attractive like crap. If you can't be kind to the people you don't want to sleep with, you're not a good person. He also just treats people like crap unless he thinks there's something he can get from them. Men who are constantly trying to appear nice. He avoids all confrontation and is more concerned with being the most popular person in the room rather than just treating people with kindness. The sort of guy who will freak out at you in private if you did something that made him look bad. Men like this will never stand up for their partners or their family if it includes any conflict with a wider social group. Condescension. He's ableist and looks down on the poor, sick, disabled, or anyone who is less fortunate or of a lower social standing than themselves. He believes less fortunate people just need to work harder. He treats service workers like crap. He is otherwise obnoxious or inconsiderate of other people. He is an anti-intellectual. You don't have to have a college education, but there are few things as unattractive as men who are proud of their ignorance. Curiosity about the world around you is important. Story 37. Crossing boundaries. I was into this guy, but I was not in a place where I wanted to have dates or anything. I told him this, but every time we spent time together, he'd call it a date, even if we split the bill and nothing physical happened between us. I bought us tickets for a band we both liked, and he kept saying he was excited for our next date. I told him it's not a date so many times. I was instantly repulsed at how pushy he was. I canceled and didn't even go to the concert. Story 38. I can say it's the same for both men and women I'm interested in. Bad hygiene, regardless of other factors, instantly makes someone unattractive. The worst is when someone you're into is stuck in a car with you and you have to endure the stench. For men specifically, being part of the Andrew Tate, Jordan Peterson, etc. audience instantly makes them unattractive as both a friend and a romantic interest. Story 39. Body odor. Trust me, those male influencers who tell you to stop wearing deodorant or cologne and that your natural smell or musk is good for attracting women are setting you up for failure. Anything pro-Trump. Being extremely overweight, we're talking 300 pounds or over, patchy facial hair, trying to work with what little hair you have left in your head. Just don't. What's the point? Bad breath at all times, unkempt fingernails and toenails, dirty clothing, except for working clothes or gym clothes. Yep, that's it. Am I missing more? Story 40. How have I not seen this yet? A texting dynamic in which he doesn't show interest in you as a person and treats you as a booty call. Like, yeah, I was super into you, but if you say, let's get together on Saturday, and then I get a late night text to join you at the random club you're at, no thank you. It's over for me. On the same note, not opening texts for days. You're sending me the message you don't care about me and I'm not going to chase that energy. While obviously still a bit salty about a recent experience. Story 41. When they compare you to other girls in a way that compliments you while disregarding others of your gender. Your taste in music or film is so eclectic for a girl. I love that you don't care about makeup or fashion. These are the kinds of things you eat up as an insecure teen and feel slightly sick about as you mature. As if women who care about their appearance or, I don't know, like freaking chart music are somehow lesser than someone who reads David Foster Wallace and K-holes to Pink Floyd. Not that I'm against that. Both are fun. Let's just not be toxic about what we presume to be the high-end way of being. Gillian Flynn hit the nail on the head spectacularly with a cool girl bit. Story 42. Their parents are the ones asking me to date them. I had a parent call me a nice girl and suggest I date their son, a teenager, who, beside him, was shaking his head no vehemently. There's also another parent who said the same thing about me. She was caring for their much older son, highlighted the benefits of dating him, and asked, well, more like demanded, for my number while I was in the middle of my work shift. The son stood not far from me, never really speaking to me. He maybe said a single word before his parents started the dating interview. Name and age, which I very vaguely answered, and just kind of looked me over. but it's super awkward having to reject parents, especially if they mean well. I'm flattered they're already in daughter-in-law seeking mode, but if the guy can't ask me himself or even wants to, I won't consider him. In my mind, their parents are the ones asking me out. Maybe it works out for some people, but not me. Story 43. I'm not a woman. However, every single woman I've dated or had any sort of intimate or romantic relationship with has said or shown me that they find the obsession and idea that money allows you to mistreat people is super nasty. Also, women, at least the ones I've been with, have always told me that they find guys who think they have to show off by fighting or being overly arrogant for women to be gross. I've been lucky and had some great girls, but I've noticed this with almost all women. Story 44. If they can't show clear empathy for the environment and creatures around them, I'm out. I don't really care all that much about people, which may be a turnoff for others, and that's fine, but if you can't be nice to the planet and non-humans in any format, I'm out. My boyfriend is a lot like me in the people aspect and is very good about being empathetic to creatures. He does care about the planet and he respects both my boundaries and his own. That's another one. If you don't know how to set and respect boundaries, I don't even want to be around you. Story 45. Having to do all social activities together. I'm guessing this may be a weird one, but I get overstimulated from a lot of socializing, and the boyfriend category also counts for socializing. At least I have yet to find one that doesn't. If they aren't okay with having their own friends and activities, they start feeling like their mom or nanny. I'm supportive and will occasionally join in, but I have my own friends and social obligations. Overdoing it is like being so tired I can't tap into any bit of myself that feels sexy. It's a slow boil that just destroys everything fun. Story 46. I saw some of my biggest answers already posted. Hygiene, but another thing that really turns me off is to see what a guy does when I'm prompted. The super small actions, the way a guy stands, if he drops a dish in the sink, if he slams doors, or if he huffs before he talks because he's annoyed. All that to me piecing together what kind of person he is when there isn't any external influence, like trying to impress me. I know that if a guy was into me, he'd try to dress nicely or do something nice to impress me, but in my experience, I've been able to piece together when someone is trying to get me versus when someone is legitimately considerate and naturally looks out for others. Story 47. Being overly dominating or controlling. I had a guy once, I was about to light a cigarette and he blew out the flame, took the lighter from me, and then lit the cigarette for me. I guess some girls are into that, but I'm not one of them. In my book, that's the dumbest crap ever. I'm a grown woman. I can open a door. Sometimes these polite social norms don't bother me, but not being bothered is different from being flattered or turned on. I think it's fine, only if the man seems relaxed and comfortable. If there's any sort of insecurity or sense that he must open the door for me to feel like a real man, huge turnoff. If he hurries to get to the door first to open it for me, that's a huge turnoff. Again, I know not all women feel this way. Surprise, guys. We're actually unique humans, and some of us feel differently about some things than others. There's no instruction manual that's going to work for all of us. Story 48. When he immediately announces his height. Maybe it's a side effect of all the vacuous, shallow witches who say things like, if you're under 6'2", don't bother, even though they have literally zero to offer as a person. My man is 6'5", and it in no way cancels out his shortcomings as a person. Is he gorgeous to look at? Sure, but everyone who's seen the two of us together would argue that I'm kind of freaking gorgeous myself. I'm just over 5'7", 130 pounds with a big smile, good teeth, a symmetrical face, blue eyes, freckles, and long dark hair. Like, I freaking pull. But he brings up his height in every argument as though I should be impressed by the thing he did nothing to attain. Story 49. A few things. Interrupts you to explain how you were technically wrong. He continues to interrupt if you don't fully explain every detail, then calls you rude after he interrupted you first. Not everyone thinks about intimacy immediately. Don't push me if I don't want to be touched. Immediate irritation and petty anger the moment you choose to do something for yourself. He interrupts you to tell you that you're being irresponsible and excluding him. There's an instant defeatism and childishness, like an I'll just do things myself attitude if you weren't going to include him. Then he stops listening and stares at Reddit the moment you try to finish your sentence and tells you to leave him alone. You can go to the store and buy food and grass, but you can't take out the trash or put more toilet paper in the bathroom. He waits until you start to clean the house and suddenly wants to clean and talk about all the things you didn't do because you were working all week. I don't care how handsome or pretty you are. No one has patience for rude and childish behavior. Your partner is your equal, not your maid or mother. If you're curious as to why they aren't having relations with you, this is probably why. Story 50. Poor common sense. I dealt with this guy who was just a schmuck, being mean to me and trying to pick fights with me a bunch. He made excuses for some of the most vile acts a man can ever do to a woman and alleged women like being mistreated. He pulled the typical narcissist thing where if anybody but the narcissist has any problems at all, the narcissist will accuse them of some kind of personality flaw for it. I'm not saying all people are perfect, people aren't perfect, but people can also be flawed individuals and be trying hard enough to deal with whatever external challenges they have in life. Trying to undermine their best efforts to overcome these obstacles is just stupid. Then he tried to blame me not liking him on some inane technical error. Well, that was just the toothpick in the crap sandwich of the guy's absolute no way in hell, big giant no thanks from me. Story 51. There was a man who showed up to the first date late. After multiple "I'm 5 minutes away" and the nearby parking lot was full texts, he ended up being 30 minutes late. Then he let it slip that his car was parked a half block from the meeting point. A lie in the first date? Nah. A second man showed up, smelly, in a raggedy shirt, with gum swollen from plaque, and talked about his near minimum wage job for an hour. Then we went to the batting cage, and he got angry at the machine, saying, "This is so crappy," because he couldn't hit for like 30 balls. Story 52. Please shower daily and wear cologne. Paying for a date you asked out is normal.
Expecting intimacy for spending money is childish and grimy. Women don't or shouldn't expect intimacy when they pay for things. Intimacy isn't an object that has to be obtained. It's a gesture of affection that is earned. Please use a bidet and/or shave your jungle. Please change your sheets at least once a week. If your feet stink, do something about it. Brush your freaking teeth and floss. Being chivalrous makes you a grown-up, not a simp. Men who gossip about women or who are passive-aggressive or a joke. Men who refuse to learn basic things like oil changes, tire changes, using power tools, or driving manual are just women with beards. Also, men who had a normal childhood but claim to be mistreated as a justification for why they haven't done crap with their lives are annoying and still losers. Story 53. Insecurity in his masculinity. A lack of emotional intimacy, regulation, or security. Hates the idea of therapy, especially if he really needs it. Rudeness. Inability to take accountability and apologize. Manipulative and immature behavior. Inability to commit. Poor communication or dishonesty. Poor hygiene. Irresponsibility. Excessive pride or codependency. Mooching. Votes against my or others as rights. Is racist, sexist, or weird or unsafe around children. Drives recklessly. Worse if there are passengers. Excessive drinking or struggling with addiction and not in the process of recovery. Physically and verbally combative. The bar is in hell for me. Story 54. Hygiene. For those of you who are raising littles, it goes without saying that at some point in your sage tutelage and upbringing of these precious little people, you have to teach them how to clean all of themselves, so they can grow up and not completely make potential romantic partners sick. I think a lot of it is probably left up to common sense, and I feel like that's a mistake. Raise soap and water babies. It's not rocket science. Please, for myself and their future partners, thank you. And while I'm at it, there's an art to doing laundry and cleaning your home, and it's easy. Every single person on this planet who has access to the internet and who pretends to not know how to do it properly is infuriating. It's just gosh darn laziness. I've noticed that all the red pill guys literally never ever talk about cleaning, unless it's a demand that someone else does it for them. That's the hugest turnoff ever. Instant nope. Well, if you like these stories, here's more. YouTube thinks you're gonna love this. Catch you in that video.